3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show Yet Not Overly Ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all of our great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming on YouTube. 855-212-4CBS is number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. And you could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Got Moist Mike and also Stuart Kovacs rocking and rolling with me all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Coming up at 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 1:20 p.m. Pacific, former Eagles linebacker Ike Reese will stop by. And then at the top of the final hour of the show at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, James Palmer, who's a phenomenal NFL Network reporter, will join us. But let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles, who get stunned last night by the Seattle Seahawks. And Drew Lock was quarterbacking the Seattle Seahawks right before the game. All the attention was on Jalen Hurts. Was he going to play? Then we get word that Jalen Hurts is going to play. And then you had this mysterious quarterback situation with the Seahawks where Geno Smith was warming up, but there was an expectation that Drew Lock was going to play in the game. And if you watch the game, the majority of the game, you thought the Eagles were the better team. And this is why I'm now concerned with the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 reasons. Number one, out of the 3 losses they just had, even though this was the closest, where they got blown out by the 49ers and they got blown out by the Cowboys, this one was the most alarming because they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. They had this game not necessarily won, but they had a leg up and they had a serious advantage when they were up 17-10. And then even when the lead was truncated to 17-13, they still should have won the damn game. And I know Jalen Hurts was sick last night. He had a flu game, but that didn't impact him on the first drive of the game. When they marched down the field, they took off 8 minutes off the clock, and they put the ball in the end zone. So I don't want to hear, oh, he was sick. He wasn't feeling 100%. He made 2 dumb decisions in the game last night. You're up 17-13. You just crossed midfield after an A.J. Brown pass and a Devontae Smith catch as well. So you had Brown and Smith both getting involved. They're going shortly down the field. They're at Seattle's 45. And Jalen Hurts, and I don't know if it was the play call or not, but they take a home run shot to Quez Watkins, and the ball gets intercepted. Where you're in the 4th quarter, and you're up by 4, you bare minimum need to walk away with the field goal, but you were probably, if you just kept it safe, and if you were just playing it smart, and if you kept on just hitting A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith for 10 yards, which you got twice on that drive, you probably end up putting the ball in the end zone. So the Eagles did survive that, but I thought that was a monumental play in the game because you had a chance, what it felt like, to put the game away. Now, with all that being said, it's still 17-13 late. Up until that point, new defensive coordinator Matt Patricia and the defense was doing a good enough job, and Drew Lock gets the ball back on his own 8. And there was under 90 seconds to go. And he marches that ball down the field in under 90 seconds, I should say. And he puts the ball in the end zone. And that Eagles secondary, it's garbage. It really is. That secondary is brutal. And James Bradbury, he couldn't stop anything. It was alarming. And I know Bradbury's not had a good season. But how much they abused him. And it's one thing to get abused by good quarterbacks, but you made Drew Lock look like an elite quarterback. That's a big-time problem. So it's time to press the big fat red panic button with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think a lot of us have already done that. But when this team was 10-1, there were conversations, oh, this team isn't as good as what their record says they are. And at that point, I was like, all righty, I'm not really going to listen to what those people are saying because you got to remember this team just went to a Super Bowl last year. They just lost to in a Super Bowl. They do know how to win games, and we're going to bitch and complain that they're not blowing people out like last year when they're 10-1. But the last 3 weeks, it was eye-opening because the small contingency of people that crushed this team for being 10-1 were telling you that this team is not as good as what their record says they are. We're absolutely right. And there's no other way around it. Because you could get blown out by the 49ers. You could get blown out by the Cowboys. And you could chalk it up to those things happen during a season. But after getting blown out by the 49ers, you would at least expect them to compete against the Cowboys. They didn't even compete. They didn't even deserve to be on the field with the Dallas Cowboys. But then you have all this talent with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Hurts, Julio Jones. Like, we could go through the entire team. Kenneth Gainwell and the Hog Mollies up front of that offensive line. There is too much talent on that team. I don't care what you think of the Seattle defense. And brain flash, newsflash for you, this ain't the LOB. You know, they have a young, up-and-coming secondary, but this is not a defense. They're improved this year, but they're not this great defense. And you could only put up 17 points on the scoreboard against this Seattle team who was playing with the backup quarterback. Like, the lasting image most of us have of Drew Lock is him in Denver celebrated on the sideline when he got off to that good start to his career. Since then, the dude's been a backup quarterback. And this Eagles defense, which played well for about 56, 57 minutes of the game, they showed you who they really were when, in the unthinkable, Drew Lock marches the team in a snap of a finger down the field. And it's not like you got a turnover that gave you good field position. You only had to get 25 yards. He went 92 yards and found Jackson Smith and Jigba right down that right sideline for a touchdown. The Eagles season is over. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, Zach, that's too harsh. It's over in terms of this idea that this team is going to the Super Bowl and that this team is going to win a Super Bowl. Because barring the 49ers just getting decimated with injuries, and they already went through their run of getting a ton of injuries, and they lost 3 games in a row, there's no way that the Eagles are going into San Francisco and Santa Clara and they're beating the 49ers. I just don't see it. And there's a major difference from last year's team to this year's team. And don't tell me it's because Shane Steichen's now coaching the Colts. Don't tell me it's because Jonathan Gann, who every Eagles fan ripped regardless, is now coaching the Cardinals. This is on the players. Like, I was in that Eagles locker room last year. That team was one. That team was whole. That team had elite team chemistry. Where you saw the veterans that have accomplished a lot, like Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, like that was their team, and they handed it over to Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts was the heartbeat of that team. He was the backbone of that team as well. He was everything to that team. And you had a great mix of younger players and older players coming together. And they were dominant last year. They blew out like every single team, and they ran it all the way to the Super Bowl where they had a 10-point lead at halftime, and they didn't get the job done. But this year, it doesn't seem like this is a team. It seems like there's a lot of individuals. And this is not just because they're in a 3-game losing streak. There were obviously signs that some of us ignored and then some of us paid attention to when they were 10-1, and it just didn't look right. But you hear last week, Darius Big Play Slay, who's now probably done for the rest of the regular season, get on his podcast and go, oh, I played a perfect game up against the Cowboys. It was basically everybody else. That's not good to hear. That's not the sign of good leadership. That's the sign of an individual. And then last night, you had Jalen Hurts talk about the commitment issues this team is having. And then when asked to define what does he mean by that, he's like, I don't have a dictionary. But remember who that's coming from. That's coming from Jalen Hurts, the guy who's the leader of the team last year and still the leader of the team this year. And maybe that's him just caught up in the moment, in the heat of the moment, where he's just saying generic things because you're in front of the podium. But to say that there is a commitment issue, whether it was 100% fully meant or if he was just caught up in the moment in front of the podium, that is alarming. Like, that has the big red flashing signs going off in your head that something is wrong. And this team, I don't think they're going to be able to fight through adversity. Like, they could get to an NFC championship game. It's not because they're this great team. It's because the rest of the NFC, you don't really trust anyone outside of the 49ers. But as long as the 49ers are in that NFC championship game, I just don't see a way that the Eagles are walking into Santa Clara and getting a victory. And it's wild because I would have never said that before the start of the season. Here is Jalen Hurts last night at the podium talking about some of the Eagles' issues.
I've been talking about execution all year, been on the same page, everyone been on the same page, and we didn't execute. I don't think we were committed enough. Just got to turn it around. It's a challenge that we have to embrace, just continue to see it through.
What do you mean by that, about being committed enough?
Commitment. I don't know that I had a dictionary on me now. I don't know how else to say that.
I guess, how are you seeing that present itself?
Just, it's a matter of being on the same page. It takes everyone being all in all aspects, and, it starts with me.
So he's basically saying not everyone's all in, not everyone's on the same page, and there's commitment issues with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, when you get can you clarify what you mean by commitment? And he's like, oh, maybe I need a dictionary. I don't have one on me to look it up to try to tell you what I'm fully saying. That goes either one or two ways. One, that is a player that is annoyed at the team and realizes that everyone is not giving its all to the team. And if that's the case, there's no way that this team is going to recover. Or two, it could be a player that's at the podium that usually does not really show his emotions, and he usually gives you a lot of quarterback speak, like as we would say for coaches speak. And then if he didn't really mean anything by it, and it was just, after every loss, I'm going to say, we need to have everyone go all in and we need everyone to be committed, then it's like, why should I ever take you seriously? And I like Jalen Hurts, and I like his leadership, but why should then we take you seriously with what you say? Because then when you actually think there are issues, we don't know if it's just going to be generic quarterback speak or if you're actually speaking your mind. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of signs here, and all the signs are pointing to that this Eagles team, and they were one of the few Super Bowl or bust teams before the season started, they ain't going to a Super Bowl. They ain't getting a chance to right the wrong from last year and correct them blowing a 10-point lead at halftime. This team, Samter, they just don't feel like they're together. And you started to even see some signs, and you heard some rumblings when they were 10-1. And I know when you lose 3 in a row, all the bleep is going to hit the fan. But this is a 10-4 football team, and I got no confidence in them for a team that has so many veterans and a team that is, when you look at them on paper, you're like, wow, there's a lot of weapons. I just don't believe they're going to have the mental toughness to fight through the storm that they're going to hear this week from the Philadelphia fans. Because if you thought it was bad the first 2 weeks, wait until now, because you teased them with the game that you should have won, and then you let Drew Lock go 92 yards down the field. This team the last 2 weeks have showed you why they're not as good as what their record indicated they were throughout most of the season.
How much stock do you put into the idea that teams need to go through this kind of stuff throughout the season to toughen them up so that when it comes playoff time that they know how to deal with it?
For some other teams that have not had this experience before and have not been this far, I would say, okay, I could listen to that. But I don't think what they're going through in these last 3 weeks is going to be anywhere close to the pain that they've felt when you're up by 10 in a Super Bowl and you don't find a way to close it out. So I don't think they need tougher moments to get the best version out of themselves. And I'm not an idiot. Like, I understand no football season, unless you are the Dolphins of 72, is going to be perfect from start to finish. So there's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be bad moments. This is just, though, not the sky is falling. That's not what this is right now. Because sometimes when you're losing and you lose 2-3 games in a row, everyone's turning at you because it's been mostly positive. This wasn't even mostly positive when they were 10-1. And sometimes you got to take it with the grain of salt and you go, those are just fans. They don't appreciate winning. Everything's got to be a blowout. But no, there were signs. And it was easy to be like me to ignore them because they were 10-1 and they were winning close games. But this defense, this secondary, they just got carved up by Drew Lock. Why should I expect this defense against a good quarterback to make the stops? Like, we just saw it from Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. They ran through this defense. And then you contain Drew Lock for most of the game and you let him run through you 92 yards down your throat in less than 90 seconds. So this defense doesn't have the toughness. The defense is horrible in the back end. And then offensively, it's like everyone's out of sync. The Eagles on paper have one of the more talented offenses from the line to the running backs to the wide receivers, the tight end, the quarterback in the league. One of the more talented offenses. And last night, it's like after the first drive of the game where they marched down the field, it was, we're good, we're back, and we'll just tap out. They didn't play 60 minutes, and that's a problem. They had multiple chances for a team that has championship DNA. They had multiple chances to put away the Seahawks, and they left that door open, and eventually Drew Lock did the unthinkable. So I'm at we asked Seth Joyner this last week, where's your concern level 1 through 10? And he said 10, and I was like, that's pretty severe number. Like, I was expecting like an 8.5. I'm now at a 20 out of 10. I just do not see how this team recovers. Where's your confidence level? The Eagles will turn around. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. This is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. More Aaron Rodgers news. When we come on back, we got some clarity on his future and if we'll see him on the field this season. We'll play that audio when we return in 5.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
This is just one of those years. If Buffalo just gets in, I think Buffalo is trending towards a playoff team, and not only trending towards a playoff team, but being a dominant team come playoff time. Everyone said they're done, they're over, and now they're starting to get life. Now they're starting to get the Undertaker kind of gift that resonates on social media, and they're popping back up from the casket, and they'll be in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl.
Here's Zach Gelb.
It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. I'll get to the Aaron Rodgers stuff with Pat McAfee in just a second. But I'm reading a report. So as you may or may not know, last night when the Seahawks beat the Eagles, Jamal Adams was a healthy inactive. So I guess once he found that news, he was not in the stadium or left the stadium after learning he would be a healthy scratch. That was per Greg Bell, who covers the team, the Seahawks, for a long time. So Pete Carroll does a weekly radio hit, I guess, after the games on KIRO AM radio. And he said, I think he was home when asked about Jamal Adams. Now, as U Stadium points out on Twitter, Julian Love started in Adams' place. He ended up being the star of the game with the 2 interceptions. The one on the deep shot early in the fourth quarter when the Eagles were up by 4 at the Seahawks 45, which they should have never taken that deep shot. And they should have just continued to get like 10 yards, 5 yards, and move the ball down the field. And then the other was right at the end of the game where somehow Julian Love got 2 feet down in bounds, as that was a miraculous interception. But once again, Hurts should have hit Kenneth Gainwell, and he could have probably ran for 20 yards and got them somewhere closer to being in field goal range. I didn't get the approach by Jalen Hurts to just take a deep shot there, because you were still, even if you hit the deep shot, it wasn't like you were breaking free from all those defenders. You would still have to line up for the field goal, but sometimes your eyes are too big in a moment like that, and you try to just make it all up in one play, where if you just slowly, even though he didn't have a lot of time, just move the ball down the field after that big run that he did have, that would have been the better option, and that's something I thought should have happened in the moment. It kind of reminded me of Super Bowl 42, after Plaxico Burress had that touchdown in the left corner of the end zone. Brady had time to go down by 3 to go get the ball in field goal range, except they just kept on taking deep shot after deep shot after deep shot to Randy Moss, and they kept on getting incomplete. But I don't like Jamal Adams. You know, I actually think Jamal Adams is my least favorite player in the league, because this is a guy that he never holds himself accountable, and he thinks he's like one of the greatest players to ever lace him up. And what he did a few weeks ago, I never talked about this, to Connor Hughes, who I don't even really know that well. I've interviewed him here and there, who covers the Jets and the Giants for SNY locally in New York, where all Connor Hughes did was, there was a play where Jamal Adams got beat, and he quote tweeted and he wrote, "Yikes." And then Jamal Adams saw that, and Jamal Adams responds back with a picture of Connor Hughes' wife and writes, "Yikes." So I thought that was very low class. And then to see him not play well after that, and then end up getting benched by his coach, and the replacement, Julian Love, ends up having 2 interceptions. That's a little sports karma for one Jamal Adams. And I know the Jets GM, Joe Douglas, is not all that popular these days, and we'll get to Aaron Rodgers in just a second. But that was maybe his best move, was getting 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams, who is just an overrated safety and basically like a glorified linebacker pretty much at this point in this game. And it's one thing when you have that confidence and you're backing it up on the field, but when you don't back it up on the field and then act like a jackass off the field, that's when I'm just out on you. You know, I'm very simple. Like, I don't trash people just to trash people. I trash people when they're bad, and then they don't hold themselves accountable, and they don't look in the mirror, and they point the finger in another direction. But anyway, let's get to Aaron Rodgers. This has been the biggest waste of everyone's time this year. To no surprise, this is how it's going to end, with surprise, surprise, the Jets being eliminated from playoff contention, and Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be playing football for the rest of the season. And it's amazing to me, and it is remarkable in some capacity, that he has returned to practice. There was even a report last week that he was playing on the scout defense, which I don't know why you would have Aaron Rodgers playing scout defense, and he was intercepting a pass that was thrown. Shows you how bad the Jets quarterbacks are when Aaron Rodgers, with an Achilles that just got torn back in September, is able to pick off a football in December. But anyway, there was a report over the weekend that the expectation is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be cleared to play what would have been this week. That was the report. Well, it ended up that not being true. Here is Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show when he was asked, is he ready to return and play football this season?
If I was 100% today, I'd be definitely pushing to play. But the fact is, I'm not. I've been working hard to get closer to that. But I'm still, 14 weeks tomorrow from my surgery, and being medically cleared as 100% healed.
It's a colossal waste of everybody's time. And I give credit to Rodgers. You could say what you want about Rodgers. He's not a dope. And he's been the last 2-3 years the biggest drama story for the NFL. With his departure from Green Bay, not liking Brian Gutekunst, not liking Matt LaFleur, blowing off meetings with Matt LaFleur when Matt LaFleur was trying to give him more of an input on the offense, a story that we broke here on CBS Sports Radio where you keep Matt LaFleur waiting. And then you had all the darkness retreat. You had the ayahuasca, right? With all that stuff with Aaron Rodgers, he's been the number one person that we've talked about the most on CBS Sports Radio the last 3 years. The moment when Jordan Love gets drafted, the start of the demise in Green Bay, then winning 2 MVPs, then constantly coming up short in the playoffs, and then the departure, the trade to the Jets, and then 4 plays into the season, after Aaron Rodgers had that great entrance holding the American flag, running out onto the field, you had Aaron Rodgers tear his Achilles. And when he tears his Achilles, then it started, how do I keep myself in the news? How do I keep talking? He does that weekly appearance with Pat McAfee, and it was always this false hope that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to come back this season. But every time he said something about coming back this season, I always said, I'll believe he returns on the field playing in a game when it happens. Because number one, he would have had to been able to have healed. And then number two, he would have needed to have the Jets to be in contention. And the Jets were eliminated last week in their loss to the Dolphins. And now it's, I'm not 100% yet. But the math doesn't add up. In terms of you not being 100%, which I get why you wouldn't. You're only 14 weeks removed from the surgery. But then why were you practicing? And you don't have to be 100% to practice. But why were you intercepting a football in practice? That seems like someone that's pretty damn close to returning to play. And now it's a few weeks. He was never going to play. But he kind of is right, and then he's kind of wrong, where he got back to the practice field earlier than any of us would have expected. So if the Jets were in contention, maybe, I don't know if he's 75% right now, 80%, I don't know. But maybe he would have sucked it up and then he would have played. Maybe. But I think he knew down deep without Aaron Rodgers and without himself that this Jets team was going nowhere because they're basically the same Jet team as we saw last year. No offensive line. Yeah, you got some weapons in Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. You got a solid defense, but without a quarterback, that defense does have some holes in it because they have to be nearly perfect to go win games. Here is Aaron Rodgers when asked about, will 2024 be his last year? A lot of people thought when he got to the Jets it was a 2-year commitment and he would play 2 years and then he would leave. Here is Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think so. I felt like when I came here that I got kind of a renewed passion and love for the game, and everything has been amazing here. I wanted, at least 2 years. I feel like this year is kind of a lost year now that I only played a couple snaps, and I don't think that next year will be my last year. I feel like I can play more years, and I can be effective into my 40s, which is crazy because I thought that I'd probably be sitting on a couch somewhere at 40, but now I want to be a starter at 40. I want to be a starter at 41. I want to see what I can get out of this body.
And I think that's a very fair stance. And I think a lot of us just didn't adjust what the expectations were after the injury. Because even though this was a year, and it's a year of his life, it's really not a year of football in terms of him playing even though he had to work at a crazy rate just to get into this spot where there was a opportunity for him to come on back and potentially play football, which we know is not going to happen now this year. So I actually do respect Aaron Rodgers in terms of he acknowledges it, and we'll see if he'll be able to stay healthy next year and how his body responds, but how his intentions are. He wants to give the Jets at least 2 years of him actually playing, which would be 2024 and then 2025. So a lot of people in the last few weeks, when they have soured on Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, they said, oh, you have to bring those guys back next year because you really only have one more year of Aaron Rodgers. Just let this trio go together for one final season. Well, now with 2 years of Aaron Rodgers wanting to play football, I think it creates a different conversation because in theory, you could bring in a new coach and a new GM, and they know that they're going to at least have a 2-year commitment, assuming Rodgers is okay with it, from Aaron Rodgers. Well, to no surprise, Aaron Rodgers today on the Pat McAfee show gave an endorsement to Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and also his buddy, Nate Hackett.
I believe in Joe Douglas. I think he's put together a lot of great drafts and a great roster. We obviously had a number of difficult injuries this season. I believe in Robert Saleh. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think he's about the right stuff. What you emphasize, you're going to get. And I think he emphasizes the right things, being about the right stuff, how to be a professional. I believe in Nate Hackett. You know, always have. I think the offense that he runs is quarterback friendly. Obviously, it was geared around me and my abilities and what I do well and my ability to get to the line of scrimmage and get us in good play and to survive bad plays.
As Deion Sanders would say, all that is a bunch of bull junk. Here's the reality. He likes Nate Hackett because Nate Hackett's like his best friend. He likes Robert Saleh because Robert Saleh lets him do whatever he wants, and he's a player-friendly coach. And then he likes Joe Douglas because Joe Douglas traded for him, and Joe Douglas allows Aaron Rodgers to basically make some personnel decisions. Aaron, who do you want? And they got a lot of those guys that Aaron Rodgers wanted, whether it was Alan Lazard, who's been terrible, Randall Cobb as well, and I bet you David Bakhtiari will be on this offensive line next year. But the fact that Joe Douglas, and according to Aaron Rodgers, built this great roster, I don't see that. Joe Douglas is supposed to know how to draft offensive linemen. This offensive line has been horrible ever since Joe Douglas got here, and it's still horrible right now. So I don't think the Jets have to bring back Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, but you know whoever would replace them has to be approved by Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers, the player, is great, but Aaron Rodgers, the GM, even going back to Green Bay, the guys that he wanted to stay that got cut by Green Bay, they didn't really do anything once they left Green Bay. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers, the GM, is a good GM. And if you have to approve who the GM and the head coach are you making the best hire? Probably not. You're just probably doing what best fits what Aaron Rodgers wants. So like I could sit here and say, yeah, the Jets should offer a first-round pick for Mike Tomlin. Would make sense. I should sit here and say the Jets should go pursue Jim Harbaugh. Give him a big contract. Would make sense. And I'm not telling you that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't want to play for those guys, but I don't think they're going to get a big-time name in there because Aaron is probably going to want someone that he could control. So in all likelihood, yes, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh will be back as the GM and the head coach of the New York Jets. But I think Joe Douglas is a fine GM. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's great. And Robert Saleh, there's a lot left to still be desired. And when you don't have a quarterback, it's tough. But I don't like the way that Robert Saleh has necessarily handled everything. And we know he has a good defense, but still offensively, this is another defensive coordinator that is a rock star on the defense, but then has nothing on the offensive side of the ball. And I know they have Rodgers. I know they have Garrett Wilson. I know they have Breece Hall. I'm not saying that they don't have players, but they get no production out of their offense. And the hope is, right, Rodgers comes back next year, he plays well, and then this will be a playoff team, and you see how far he could take it, and it will take some pressure off of this great defense by having that quarterback. But this all goes for nothing if you don't find a way to bring in an offensive line next year. Because if you don't have an offensive line, Rodgers coming off this injury in his 40s, he's either going to get hurt once again, or he's going to get frustrated, or he's just going to get hit a lot, if not all the above. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a timeout. We'll come on back with a little overreaction, proper reaction on this Tuesday coming off Week 15. But first up with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here is the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Progressive makes bundling easy and affordable. Get a multi-policy discount by combining your motorcycle, RV, boat, ATV, and more. All your protection in one place. Bundle and save at Progressive.com. Aaron Rodgers' return will likely come next year. In his weekly spot on the Pat McAfee Show, the Jets quarterback said he hasn't been cleared yet and would have pushed if he's 100%, but he is not. He said this was a lost year and that he'd like to play 2 more, and also offered support for the Jets front office and entire coaching staff. Desmond Ridder takes a seat once again, and Taylor Heineke will start for the Falcons this weekend when they face the Colts. Ridder had seemed to respond well initially after being benched earlier in the year. However, he had 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in his last 4 games. The Bucs, chasing a title again, are currently a game and a half back in the East and will host the 4-21 Spurs tonight, while the Celtics lead the conference and take a 5-game winning streak to San Francisco to meet the Warriors. Also tonight, the Pelicans host the Grizzlies, who expect to have Ja Morant for the first time after he served his 25-game suspension. I'm Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio is turning up the heat this December.
From the NFL playoff push, bowl games, and coast-to-coast action from the NBA hardcourt to the college game,
We've got you covered.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining.
1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
Baker today deserves his flowers. He deserves his respect. And I'm not telling you Baker is this great elite quarterback, but I don't think Baker Mayfield is this bum. That was my part of the final year in Cleveland. It didn't mean he was going to fall off a cliff. And everyone wrote off the Bucs before the start of the season because they didn't have Tom Brady anymore. But Tampa Bay, they have everything right there for the taking.
Here's Zach Gelb.
The Defensive Player of the Week is sponsored by the Navy Federal Credit Union, who proudly serves the armed forces, DoD veterans, and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. In Sunday's 30-0 win over the JETS Jets, Dolphins pass rusher Bradley Chubb had 7 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Also a fumble recovery as well. Chubb now has 9.5 sacks on the season and 38 for his career. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. Let's get to a little overreaction, proper reaction.
Another NFL week is complete, which means it's another week to freak out about your favorite team. Which takes are truly crazy.
But sometimes a game can be so bad, it's almost good. You know what I'm saying? No.
And which are so crazy, they might be right.
He's 6'5", he's 245 pounds. He's probably a Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end.
Zach lets you know in this week's edition of Overreaction or Proper Reaction.
Santer, usually you ask me the questions here. We're calling an audible. Little Omaha. I have a question right out of the gate for you guys. And I actually don't even think Stu, who's the biggest Swiftie on the planet, even knows about this story. So, Bernie Kosar, remember, a few weeks ago, was seen with Taylor Swift. I guess this was at Travis Kelce's house before a Chiefs game. So, Bernie Kosar was doing an interview on 560 WQAM the other day with Brandon Tobin and Leroy Horde, 2 great guys, 2 good talk show hosts. And Taylor Swift said, Bernie Kosar said that photo was at his house like 3 hours before the game. We're having a pregame meal, and Taylor is so nice. She comes all by herself, and she's so cool. She brings her homemade cinnamon rolls for Travis for the pregame meal. Now, I've seen a photo of these cinnamon rolls. Because at first, I'm like, is that really a great pregame meal, cinnamon roll? They look like they are to die for. They look elite. If she's actually making these at her house, she could open up a bakery. That's how good the cinnamon rolls look. So overreaction, proper reaction. Your significant other is making you something sweet. Cinnamon rolls are the best things for your significant other to make you. Overreaction or proper reaction?
I'm going to speak for myself. My wife makes an incredible pumpkin bread.
Ooh.
Like an absolutely, the word that you call me.
Moist?
That one.
Mm-hmm.
It is delicious, flavorful. So, and she also makes a great pumpkin bread. She also makes a pumpkin or banana. I'm sorry, a banana bread, a banana cheesecake.
Oh, we're the samplings. We're not getting any for the show?
Well, since the baby's come along, there's been a little bit less baking, but
had some responsibilities.
It's going to be right back on. So if I'm looking for something sweet, I do love a cinnamon roll. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But knowing my wife, either a banana cheesecake or pumpkin bread, that's what I want from her.
I have to shout out, by the way, Tiki Barber's wife, Tracy, who made banana bread last week. It was some of the best banana bread I've ever had.
She can bake. She actually made a pistachio bread a couple of years ago, and that was like, because I've had good banana bread, and banana bread is, if you make it good, but it's all over the place, right? You always have banana bread. When have you ever had pistachio bread?
Never.
It was so good, I can't stop thinking about it. Every time around the holidays, I ask Tiki for pistachio bread.
Stu?
Mine's never made me that. She just usually goes with the cookies or the cake. I guess the more basic stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I had a gal once make me, it was Oreo cheesecake, and it was to die for. It was awesome.
I told you, anything Oreo I'm obsessed with.
Yeah, now these cinnamon rolls, Taylor Swift, if you're listening, I wouldn't be opposed to trying them, but I just don't think it's the preeminent item, so I would go overreaction as well. And all Swifties, by the way, my Twitter handle is at Big Mike CBS. Just don't tweet actually at Zach Gelb because I don't want to deal with any of the hate of me. People thinking I'm hating on the Taylor Swift cinnamon rolls. I'm not. I just don't think it's the best thing to have.
And it just feels like a weird pregame snack also.
Yeah, probably make me want to run to the bathroom.
Yeah, and a lot of sugar is probably not the ideal thing for a player who's getting ready for a football game.
There was one time before a basketball game in high school, my dad made lasagna, and I had lasagna like 3 hours before the game. We were up big. We went on a big run out of the gate, and then I called the timeout and made a big run to the bathroom and had to have all the lasagna come out of my system.
Oh, that's not what I need to hear. Okay, let's move on.
We won the game, though.
Yeah, I don't need to know these things. Okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom myself.
I had a great game. I had a big game.
Oh, God, I did not need to hear that today. The Bengals got some more bad news today, learning that Jamar Chase is expected to, quote, miss some time with a shoulder injury, meaning he'll be out at least this week and likely longer. Overreaction, proper reaction. Without Burrow and Chase, the 8-6 Bengals will actually miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's the straw that's going to break the camel's back. There's just too many good teams in the AFC. Like either the Bills or the Dolphins. I think one of them are going to get a wild card spot. One will win the division. And that's now become a big conversation in the AFC South. You have the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Texans all vying for a division and then wild card spots. The Broncos still technically alive as well. And the Cleveland Browns are in a good spot too. I think that they're going to come up just short of making the playoffs. They'll be like, 9 wins, maybe even 10 wins? But I think they're going to lose a tiebreaker, and they'll be on the outside looking in. So I will say overreaction. Or it should be proper reaction that the 8-6 Bengals will miss the playoffs.
Now, our boy Tommy DeVito has taken New York by storm, but his head may be getting a little bit too big for his accomplishments. This week, a New Jersey pizzeria announced on social media it would no longer be hosting a DeVito event today because DeVito's managers doubled the fee from $10,000 to $20,000. Overreaction, proper reaction. DeVito was wrong for asking for more money.
And the agent was claiming that they never had an agreement. I don't think they're wrong. If you think you're worth something, you should go ask for it. But then the restaurant has every right to say you're not worth that. So I don't think they're wrong for asking for more money. Now, if they lied to us and had an actual agreement and a signed contract and all that, yeah, then I think that's a little bit slimy and it's bad business. But if they never had a signature on a piece of paper, I don't have a problem with them asking for $10,000 more. I also have no problem with the restaurant saying no. So overreaction, proper reaction. DeVito was wrong for asking for more money. I will say that is a overreaction.
Now, the Atlanta Falcons are switching quarterbacks again, going back to Taylor Heineke for the second time this season. Heineke lost all 3 of the games in which he's played, while Desmond Ridder has lost 2 straight, including Sunday's embarrassing defeat to the now 2-win Panthers. Overreaction, proper reaction. The Falcons are making a mistake going back to Heineke so quickly.
That is a overreaction. Desmond Ridder is just not good, and they're asking him to be better than what he is and more than just a game manager. And I don't know why they don't use Bijan Robinson more. We at least saw Taylor Heineke have some moments, and Arthur Smith, I think, realizes neither are good enough. So go to the guy that has more experience and the guy that didn't just throw away the game the last week in an inexcusable interception. So the Falcons are making a mistake by going back to Heineke. No, that would be an overreaction. Taylor Heineke time coming to Atlanta.
Now, get ready to hear me talk a lot. This is a long one. Now, Steelers defensive back DeMonte Kazee was suspended for the rest of the season after delivering a nasty helmet-to-helmet hit on the Colts' Michael Pittman Jr. However, a surprising person came to his defense, Tom Brady.
Bah!
The GOAT posted on Instagram, quote, QBs should not be throwing the ball in areas where they are exposing their own teammates to these types of hits. To put the blame on the defensive player all the time is just flat out wrong. Overreaction, proper reaction. We should put more blame on QBs for the bad hits their receivers take.
You could put a little blame on quarterbacks, and I'm not saying that it's easy to slow down as a defender. And I think there's players that you should try to avoid and put your teammates in better situations. But to make this as simple as, oh, it's always on the quarterback and it's always on the quarterback to put the ball in a better position, yeah, I don't love that, because how many times, and this is coming from someone that loves Tom Brady, would he throw a ball in a questionable spot, Edelman would catch it and get hit, and then we all praise Julian Edelman's toughness. So we should put more blame on quarterbacks for the bad hits the receivers are taking. Yeah, I don't love that one. I would go overreaction.
Now, once again, while all eyes are on defensive stars like T.J. Watt, Khalil Mack, Nick Bosa, and Micah Parsons, the Vikings' Danielle Hunter...
And Myles Garrett.
I'm sorry, I forgot him. The Vikings' Danielle Hunter is just plugging away with another monster season. The 29-year-old three-time Pro Bowler is second in the league with 15.5 sacks, his fifth season with double-digit sacks, and is now 86 all-time in sacks. With likely many years left to play, will likely probably retire in the top 30 all-time if he continues on this pace. Overreaction, proper reaction. Danielle Hunter will make the Hall of Fame.
I'm going to go overreaction. He's got to have like 3 or 4 more seasons of this. And just because you do that, you only get 5 guys in the Hall each and every year. I still think it's very tough. He is a very, 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 very good player. He has a chance to be a Hall of Famer. But there's some guys that have over 100 sacks, like Kevin Carter, that aren't even in the Hall of Fame as well, don't even get a sniff of being in the Hall of Fame. He's a rock star, but I just have a feeling he'll be just on the outside looking in, and he'll need a lot of years of support to get him in the Hall. But if he has 3 or 4 more seasons of this, then it could be a different conversation. But for now, I will say that's an overreaction.
All right, last one real quick. Deron Bland leads the NFL with 8 picks, set the all-time record for 5 interceptions returned for a single season, and he's the second highest graded cornerback on PFF. So overreaction, proper reaction. Deron Bland should actually win Defensive Player of the Year.
I'm going to go overreaction. There's clearly a case to be made. I would say in his own team, Micah Parsons has more of a case, but I really do believe this is coming down to either Myles Garrett or T.J. Watt to win Defensive Player of the Year. It just feels like those have been the 2 names that have resonated the most, and I think one of those gentlemen will end up winning the award. So should Deron Bland win Defensive Player of the Year, I will go overreaction. All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We will take a look at the NFC when we return. Also delve into the chase to win the AFC East and the NFC East. And Ike Reese will join us coming up 25 minutes from now. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio on a Tuesday.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, away we go. Hour number 2 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Former Eagles linebacker Ike Reese going to stop on by coming up in 20 minutes from now. You know, I remember it was 2 years ago where we got a great late season game between the Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. And then they played the last 2 years, I think both times in December. And this year they're playing at the end of December again, but it doesn't have the same juice. But the reason why I bring that up is, you know, that was basically the appetizer for the main course where those two teams would meet up once again in the postseason. And it happened in back-to-back years. Coming up this weekend on a Monday night, actually. So that's Christmas Day. You have the Baltimore Ravens going to San Francisco. And that has a Super Bowl preview type of feel. Where in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, it would be a shock if they don't get there. Because, like, you go through this, yeah, you have some contenders right now. Like the Eagles, even though they've just lost 3 in a row, they still have a chance, I guess, to get to the Super Bowl, even though I don't believe they will. The Detroit Lions have a good record, but is anyone expecting the Lions on the road to go win a big playoff game? Probably not. And the Dallas Cowboys, they're synonymous with, in the big game, just coming up short. So I have no doubt in my mind that the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. The only way the 49ers don't go to the Super Bowl, and anything could happen in a one game and you go home type of sport, is if they get injured. And there's a possibility that they could get injured. But where the injuries occur, is it big enough to take away from the team? And we saw it in their 3-game stretch where they lost 3 games in a row. They were without Trent Williams. They were without Deebo Samuel. And even Christian McCaffrey was dealing with a lingering issue, even though he didn't miss the game. And when you took those players off of that team, and Williams was out and Deebo was out, that team looked vulnerable. And I remember it was on the show where I said, and it's ironic that it was me of all people that said this, that let's pump the brakes on the 49ers criticism, because at that point people were saying, oh, see, Brock Purdy's not that good. Oh, the 49ers are not that great. They're invincible. And I'm like, guys, it's really important that we all acknowledge who they were playing without. Because not only is Trent Williams the best left tackle in football, not only is Deebo Samuel one of the biggest nightmares to guard defensively with what he could do in the run game and also the way that he could physically beat you up in the pass-catching game as well, you know, playing both wide receiver and kind of being used on some running back plays as well. They're big-time leaders on that football team, where you see they set the tone before every game, walking out with the boombox, and that's Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel right in front of that line. So as long as McCaffrey and Deebo and Trent Williams, and also you have to acknowledge Brock Purdy, are healthy, like those 4 guys, if they stay healthy, I don't see the Eagles, the Lions, the Cowboys walking into Santa Clara, assuming the 49ers have the 1 seed, and beating them in the playoffs. And even if the 49ers have to go on the road, like even if the 49ers somewhere had to go to Dallas, or they had to go to Philadelphia, or they had to go to Detroit, I think the 49ers are beating everybody this year in the NFC. Now, we'll see a lot more about those teams in the games whenever we get there in the divisional round or the NFC title game. Because the Cowboys, each and every year, they lose to the 49ers. The last 3 times they played them, they lost in that playoff game where Dak Prescott couldn't snap the ball after the dumb approach to slide and then get back up to the line. Then after that, they got blown out. Or, excuse me, they didn't get blown out, but in the NFC title game, their defense played really well, but Dak couldn't get the ball in the end zone without Tony Pollard. And he had a fumbling mistake, had an interception mistake as well. But then this year, they just got rolled, absolutely rolled by the 49ers. So I don't believe that the Cowboys in a big spot are going to beat the 49ers. The Lions, it seems like their apex and their ceiling for this year is winning a playoff game for the first time since the 1991 season. So they should get a wild card victory, right? Whoever they're playing as the 2 seed, the 3 seed, whatever it is, they should get a wild card victory. And then after that, like if you had to have the Lions go to Dallas or the Lions go to Philadelphia, the Lions go to the 49ers, I don't trust Jared Goff outside of Ford Field. And I know 2 of those places are outdoor environment, and then Jerry's World is not. So maybe be a more favorable matchup going to Jerry's World for Jared Goff. And then you look at the Eagles, it's tough for me, as someone that really liked that Eagles team, it is tough for me to lead this campaign and lead this charge that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to turn it around. Because my biggest problem with the Eagles right now, and there's a lot, right? The offense only put up 17 points last night with all that talent. They tried to be too aggressive, and sometimes we want to see teams be aggressive, but there's a difference in being aggressive and then just being stupid. The Eagles were stupid last night. With the 2 long passing attempts that they took, one, when they're up by 4, they're moving the ball, they're on the Seahawks 45, and they throw an interception trying to go get a home run play, and take a kill shot when it was unnecessary. And the way that you saw that drive was slowly building up with a nice pass, short distance to A.J. Brown, then over the middle to Devontae Smith as well. They should have just kept on doing that and mixing in the run as well, and I do believe they would have got the final 45 yards and wind up in the end zone. Instead, let's just throw the ball up deep, and then it got picked off by Julian Love. And at the end of the game, when Drew Lock takes the lead for the first time in the game with 28 seconds left, Jalen Hurts gets a big run. If he would have just went to the check down option of Kenneth Gainwell, Gainwell runs for 20, 25 yards and probably puts him in field goal position. And I know there's only 10 seconds left, so we got to see how long that would take him to run down the sideline, but he's getting out of bounds and he's putting you in a more favorable spot than just chucking the ball up deep down the right sideline and it getting picked off once again by Julian Love. But my biggest gripe with the Eagles, outside of the defense being soft, that's under consideration. The offense not finishing off drives. It's really not those two things. It's a lack of team chemistry with this team. Because last week it was Darius big play Slay in embarrassing fashion, getting on his podcast after they got torched by Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys and saying, oh, I actually played a great game. How dare a fan put my name on a trash can, which you could have a problem with, and then attack me for my performance when I played great. I don't care how great you think you played. That means jack. It's not an I sport. It's a team sport. It's a we sport. So you could go have this great game, and that gets me so annoyed. Like, when Emmitt Smith joined us in the studio, he's like, oh, this makes me hot, knowing the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's no longer on the Dallas Cowboys. So, like, one of my favorite quotes ever, just the way that Emmitt Smith said that. You know what makes me really annoyed? You know what makes me hot? It's when players just post their individual accomplishments when the team loses. Like, I just don't understand that. And I get it, right? You're trying to grow your brand and do things like that. And, maybe if you're playing in Tampa Bay, you could get away with that. But when you're in Philadelphia, a passionate city like that, where those fans eat, live, sleep, they live and die by the team success of the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, you're in Philadelphia when the team is buzzing, even when they're not buzzing. Everyone, it doesn't matter what sex you are, what race you are, what religion you are, everyone is wearing Eagles gear. Like, when I went to the playoffs last year on a Saturday, right before Conference Championship Sunday, every single person was in green. So that's a fan base that sometimes gets a bad rap, right? They boo their players and all that stuff. They only boo their players when it's deserved. And for Darius Slay last week to basically say, I played great, how dare you criticize me, when the team got carved up, that was embarrassing. And then you had Jalen Hurts the other night, right? Him talking about the commitment issues. Let's play that one more time. I know we played it earlier, but I want to play it again. Here is Jalen Hurts talking about the commitment issues that the Eagles teammates are having right now.
I've been talking about execution all year, been on the same page, everyone been on the same page, and we didn't execute. I don't think we were committed enough. Just got to turn it around. It's a challenge that we have to embrace, just continue to see it through.
What do you mean by that, about being committed enough?
Commitment. I don't know that if I had a dictionary on me now, I don't know how else to say that.
I guess, how are you seeing that present itself?
It's just, it's a matter of being on the same page. It takes everyone being all in all aspects, and, it starts with me.
So after hearing that again, the last 10 seconds are the most important part. Like, forget about all the jokes with the dictionary and he didn't know what commitment meant and all that. But what he's saying at the end is not everybody is all in. And that's the leader of the Eagles saying that. And this isn't week 2. This isn't week 3. You're not fixing that in the final 3 weeks of the season when everyone's banged up. And if you can't get committed and if you can't give it your all the moment you have a little adversity hit, that's alarming. It is. For a team that got to the Super Bowl last year, has a bunch of veterans, a bunch of youngsters, they've had experience, they got teased with almost winning a Super Bowl last year, up by 10 at halftime, and then they blew it. And this group now, after getting blown out by the 49ers, after getting blown out by the Cowboys, they didn't put in a great week of effort. That effort's getting questioned by Jalen Hurts. And this one's actually the most damaging because they had the game basically won. And then they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. So I look at this Eagles team. It should have been obvious after they lost to San Francisco. Not that they just lost, but then they followed it up with getting rolled again against the Cowboys. So what Hurts is saying isn't wrong, even though I don't know, was it just caught up in the emotions after the game? Is it just quarterback speak, or he actually feels this way? But let's take it for a second with him actually feeling this way. And I don't think it's that far stretched to say that that's an accurate way that he views some of the teammates right now, Because after the 49ers game, you think a veteran group would at least give a good effort. And a team that has had playoff experience at least give a good effort against the Cowboys. Instead, they got embarrassed 2 weeks in a row. So long story short, I look at the NFC. Don't trust the Eagles. Don't trust the Cowboys. Don't trust the Lions. The only team I trust are the San Francisco 49ers. And then you get into the AFC, and it's like, okay, the Ravens are the best. This could be a Super Bowl preview this weekend, but the Ravens still have to get their playoff problems of previous years corrected. And you would hope the health of Lamar Jackson puts them in a better spot to do that. But we'll have to wait and see. And, some people will buy stock in Miami. Some people will buy back, on the Kansas City Chiefs. If you listen to this show, I'm buying in on the Buffalo Bills. And I ultimately think it will be the Bills going up against the San Francisco 49ers. But it would be pretty damn cool if we get a great classic game on Monday between the 49ers and the Ravens. Let's say one of those teams win, 27-24. And then Samter, right, you see that matchup coming up in Las Vegas in the Super Bowl. It would feel very similar to the Chiefs and the Bengals, what we've seen the last 2 years. It happening, though, around earlier. Great matchup in the regular season, then seeing them meet up in the AFC title game.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm curious to see if what Jalen Hurts said,
wakes them up.
Wakes them up.
You won't see that, though, in the rest of the regular season, though.
Well, I mean, we might. We might see. I mean, listen, we've seen teams
you may
that
see
seem
it
like
the
they were
wrong
falling
way.
apart, and then they kind of came back. Look at the Bills,
Yeah.
right? The whole thing with Sean McDermott could have torn that team apart. Losing their offensive coordinator could have torn that team apart. Instead, those two things have galvanized them, and now they're maybe the best team in the AFC or one of the best teams in the AFC, and they came out of the dead. So this could either be the wake-up call that the Eagles need. Championship teams go through adversity, and championship teams rise to the top when the adversity hits. This is adversity. It's the perfect time to have it. It's towards the end of the year. It gives you enough time to correct it, but it doesn't also need to actually destroy the season. This could be the wake-up call that those veterans and those players and that coaching staff needs to beat the 49ers.
Well, that's when we'll ultimately find out. That's when we'll ultimately find out. Because they play the Giants and the Cardinals the final 3 weeks of the season. No public perception is going to change about them in the final 3 weeks of the season, even if they get a wild card
win. It's not public perception. It's inside that locker room and how they. So you might be right. We might not see it, but it might be happening underneath the surface without us knowing it.
I don't think it would happen until the divisional round. They go get a big divisional round victory, let's say against the Lions or the Cowboys, whoever it is, and then they blow one of those teams out. It could quickly recreate that momentum that could carry over into San Francisco. The problem is, I don't think San Francisco's, and nor should they be, they're not intimidated at all by the Philadelphia Eagles, and maybe that overconfidence will lead to their downfall. But if you put that ball on the field down coming up at the end of January between the Eagles and the 49ers, right now I just don't see a way I could predict an Eagles victory. All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Ike Reese, former Eagles linebacker and host on Sports Radio 94 WIP, will join us next to talk about the Eagles' problems.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining.
We continue. This is Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. Seahawks stun the Eagles last night as Drew Lock completes a touchdown to Jackson Smith-Njigba for the Seahawks' first lead of the game with 28 seconds remaining. Let's go out to the guest line right now. Welcoming former Eagles linebacker and special team star, and now does a great job in the afternoons for a while on Sports Radio 94 WIP, and that is Ike Reese. Ike, how you been, my friend?
What's up, Zach? Thanks for having me, brother.
Well, I know the sky is falling in Philadelphia today after another Eagles lost their third straight. Just how did you process it last night? Because there's losses and then there's really bad losses. And to see what Drew Lock did going 92 yards in less than 90 seconds, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, I thought it was the probably the worst loss from a feeling standpoint that I've had under Nick Sirianni, as a head coach. They've lost some games during his time here, but expectations and circumstances matter. And when you look at that game last night, after losing two straight coming into that game, the expectations and circumstances, in my opinion, was that the Eagles needed a win last night, almost in a must-win fashion, just from a psyche standpoint. And to come out and play the way that they played, and I'm not going to say they played great football last night, although I thought the defense showed a lot of promising things last night up until that final drive. But I like the way they started the game. Opening drive, they ran the football effectively. They went down and got a touchdown. You had a 10-point lead at some point. And then, I don't know if they took their foot off the gas or things just stopped executing, or they stopped executing the way they were early in the game, and particularly at the quarterback position. And what happens is you let Seattle hang around, and they just chipped away at the lead. And even when you have control of the game late, those turnovers, you just can't have them. Like, you can't have those 2 interceptions there. You got a 4-point lead, and with about 7 to 8 minutes left to go in the game, you're at midfield or a little past midfield. It's first down. The drive is moving smoothly. Looks like you're about to go down and get points while taking more time off the clock. And he throws the ball up to Quez Watkins. And I understand what he's thinking there. Be aggressive. You see a one-on-one situation. But you got to know your personnel. That's not A.J. Brown you're throwing the ball to. And then secondly, I got to put a little blame on the wide receiver, because when a quarterback does trust you like that, you have to reward his trust by not allowing the worst case scenario to happen, which is an interception. If that's an incomplete pass, it's second down, we run something else, we still have the ball. So to me, that's a play where Quez Watkins, you have to go up and at least make an attempt for the ball, and you certainly can't allow the DB to make that interception. I don't care if they call offensive pass interference on you. You can't allow that interception to happen.
Yeah, I actually thought that was the most egregious play last night, because like you were saying, they hit A.J. Brown, they hit Devontae Smith, they're moving the ball down the field. It's a 4-point game. You're looking to put that one away, and I thought it was too aggressive in that spot. But Ike Reese, how about at the end of the game? It looked like he had Gainwell open, and it looked as if Jalen was trying to play hero ball when all you needed was a field goal in limited time.
Yeah, and when those plays work, everybody loves you for it. You're being aggressive and all those things. But this is the flip side of that coin, is that there's times where that play is not going to work. And you have to be situational aware, right? And Jalen's a smart quarterback. He's heady. He understands in-game situations. I'm a little baffled that he really rolled the dice with the game on the line there. You're in a manageable situation with 2 timeouts still left. You got the entire field to use. You can use the middle of the field and then call a timeout. You need about 10 to 15 yards at the most to get Jake Elliott in reasonable field goal distance. You got one of the most, if not the most, outside of Justin Tucker, you got one of the most clutch field goal kickers in the entire game. And that has to be in the back of your mind. Not only Jalen, it has to be in the back of the coach's mind when you call a play. At least remind him, hey, we don't need to be greedy. If it's not there, take your check down. We got 2 timeouts. We're just trying to get in the field goal range. And I just thought that play, the risk wasn't worth the reward there. It just wasn't worth it because, A, there is safety coverage over the top of A.J. there. And B, I mean, even if he catches that ball, okay, you still have to kick a field goal. Like we're not going in for a touchdown there because it's going to be about, 5 seconds left on the clock, 6 seconds left on the clock. So you're still probably going to wind up kicking a field goal. I just think it was an unnecessary risk. And I know that's probably the play that Jalen wishes he had back because you really basically robbed yourselves of an opportunity to at least send that game into overtime.
Ike Reese here with us. I know the answer is probably a mixture of both. It's not one or the other, but if you had to put the blame more on one side or the other, is it the coaching without having Shane Steichen anymore and changing both coordinators, or is it more so this is just on the players, they have to execute better?
Yeah, I'm more of it's the players guy. I put the onus on the players. Unless something is egregious as far as we can all obviously see things wrong from a schematic standpoint, I think we have the ability to have hindsight and look at plays and say, okay, we should have did this or we should have did that. And some of that's there. Some of that is true where you can scheme up some things a little bit better and put your players in a better position. But if I'm going to tip the scale one way or the other, it's to the players. It's to the players. And you're in position, like take, for example, we just talked about Jalen in those situations. Those aren't play designs. That's the quarterback having the option to go where he wants to go with the football and understanding the in-game situation. Take it to the other side of the ball. James Bradbury, the play he got beat on that touchdown, that just can't happen. I mean, it can't happen. You can't allow a receiver to get behind you in man-to-man coverage. And his explanation last night that he was playing the sticks, I mean, you're not trying to keep them from getting a first down. You're trying to keep them from getting a touchdown. The score is 17-13. Not even a field goal beats you. So you know they have to score a touchdown there. I say all of that to say that if you're situationally aware of what's going on, you know how to play that coverage. And you give yourself a little more cushion. By the way, he was lined up 10 yards off the ball. But you still allow Jackson Smith and Jigba to eat up your cushion, and then run by you when you know you don't have any safety help. Now, he's the one who said he wasn't expecting any safety help. He said that last night. So I know there was some question out there as to whether or not Sidney Brown had been over the top of him and was he expecting safety help. Well, according to James Bradbury, he was not expecting safety help. He just played the coverage poorly from a technique standpoint, and that's really what allowed that touchdown there. But that's another one of those situations where you're saying, okay, even if he catches the ball underneath, what have you, you make the tackle. They don't have any timeouts. So even if you make the tackle in bounds, they're still in a hurry-up, rush, panic mode. And let's see if Drew Lock can make a decision correctly under those circumstances when he has more pressure on him. To me, he made two easy throws that his guys just went up and made a play. DK Metcalf made a great catch in between double coverage. Again, Bradbury was over there. And then they went back at Bradbury with Smith and Jigba, and that was one-on-one. And for a guy who's a former All-Pro, you expect him to play that coverage and man-to-man a little bit better.
I agree. The press conference Jalen Hurts had after the game was so bizarre when he said they're not committed enough. And then when pressed on it, he's like, I don't have a dictionary to define commitment. What did you make of that? Is there something more there? Is that just a player after a game frustrated just saying things?
I lean a little bit towards that. Jalen hasn't been one in the past that has thrown out inflammatory comments to where the next day he's making headlines for saying something. He usually plays things by the book. He's going to usually keep things close to his vest, and he's going to take responsibility of his own play and not necessarily point the finger. So I look at that situation, Zach, and I say maybe he misspoke. Sometimes you're up there and you're searching for answers, and things are going through your head, and you already have the emotion of how that game just ended. He's human as well. I just think he misspoke and didn't really have a clarification of what he was trying to say in that moment. At least that's what I think.
And you know what the bizarre part is, though? Like, this team last year, they had such great team chemistry. And just in the last 2 weeks, and I know it doesn't help when you're losing, but you basically have Darius Slay going on his podcast saying, hey, I played perfect. The rest of the defense basically sucked. And then you just have this commitment quote. I don't know if there's more to it, but it doesn't seem like the same team chemistry is there this year. And it's bizarre because it's not like they've changed that many players from last year to this year.
I have to agree with that. Not having the privilege to be in the locker room amongst these guys, it's hard to pinpoint where there could be some sort of chemistry issues. But when you are playing this way and you lose to San Francisco, how you lost to San Francisco, and then you come back the next week against Dallas, and then you have a game like this, first thing I'm thinking, man, there's got to be more behind the scenes that's going on. Something doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like everybody's pulling in the same direction. And, that's the making of a bad football team. Or certainly when things seem to be going awry, you're either going to pull closer together and unite as a team, like we saw in 2017, or you're going to pull apart, like we saw in 2018, 2019, when things weren't going well for the Eagles. And we know the drastic season that happened in 2020. So I don't want to push the panic button and feel like that's where we're headed. But when losses continue to mount up, you can't help but wonder, is there more to it than what we're just seeing on the field? Is everything okay behind closed doors, behind the scenes? Sometimes when you win games, it masks certain things, the way people may be feeling or what have you. And then as soon as you start to lose a game or two, that's when it rears its ugly head and it shows itself. And to your point, I thought it was curious the comment Fletcher had, I think it was after the Cowboy game, or maybe it was after the Niners game, when he talked about, we're going to see what we're made of right now, who we have in this locker room, who's going to be willing to fight. Like, that doesn't come out of nowhere. Like that came from a place where Fletcher is directing something to his teammates. He's not just speaking to us as fans. He's really speaking to his teammates, and he's speaking to maybe an issue that could be going on as far as people being committed. And that's where the Jalen Hurts comment comes in. So, yeah, when you start to put things together there, yeah, maybe that's me hoping that there's no issues behind the scenes. But to your point, it was a weird comment and statement to make. And then even when asked to clarify it, he didn't know where to go with it versus, oh, that's not what I meant to say. This is what I was saying. It was almost like whatever. And so, boy, I tell you, it would be a shame because this season isn't over with. The season isn't over with. They've already qualified for the playoffs. You've hit a rough patch. If you can get things together, we know the one team they have to gear up to beat. And that's the only team. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the only team that I'm concerned with is playing San Francisco. Are we good enough to beat them? Well, right now, we're not good enough to beat anybody. But ultimately, that's what you're trying to work towards because that's the monster you're going to have to take on if you want to get to the Super Bowl.
Last thing I'll ask you, because you were a respected voice when you were in the locker room. Let's say you were a Brandon Graham or a Lane Johnson, a Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox right now. What would you be saying to your teammates to prevent this ship from sinking? Because it's looking like it's going down the wrong road right now.
To me, and I'm pretty sure these guys have already tried different methods of talking to the teammates and rallying the troops here. But to me, it's about enough of the talking. Enough of saying, this is what we're going to do. We know we're a good team. The less is said, the better off you are. Put your head down, get to work, all right? You put your hard hat on, put your boots on, grab your lunch pail, and we got to dig ourselves out of this. Nobody's going to help us. Nobody's feeling sorry for us. Quit blaming the coaches. Quit blaming this. Quit blaming the schemes. We're beating ourselves with penalties at the wrong time, with turnovers at the wrong time. That's stuff that we can control as players. And if we clean that stuff up, and at the end of the day, we can say we did those things, more often than not, you're going to come out victorious. So for those four, I call them the four fathers.
Yeah.
Fletcher, Brandon, Jason, and Lane. Yeah. You know what it's like to be a Super Bowl champion. Not everybody else on this team does. You know what it's like to play here when things aren't going well. Not everybody else knows. They have to be able to get that resonated with their teammates. But you have to wonder. Here's the thing I'll say, Zach, before I get out of here. Especially on defense. There's so many new faces. You wonder if everyone is connected. You just wonder. Because sometimes you can preach that message and it doesn't hit with everybody. It doesn't resonate with everyone. So from a mixture of the youth movement they had through the last two drafts to the guys they brought in to help, the Julio Joneses, the Kevin Byers, the Bradley Robies, the Shaq Leonard, guys like that, they brought in to try to help. These guys don't know what it's like to play here in Philadelphia, to wear that uniform, what it means. And to try to get them to all be on the same page, man, it was amazing they were able to do that last year and get to the Super Bowl, and they did it in 2017 and won the Super Bowl. But then there's plenty of other instances around the league of history where this doesn't work, where, you can get a collection of talent, and it can only carry you so far. But you need character. You need guys that will fight through the tough times and stick together versus looking to point the finger when things aren't going well. And I didn't like the Derek Gunn stuff, that leaked out to him. Whoever did that to me was pointing the finger at somebody else. That type of stuff is not conducive to a winning culture, and it certainly isn't conducive to winning a championship.
He's the voice of Philadelphia sports afternoons on Sports Radio 94 WIP. Of course, is Ike Reese. Ike, always great to see you. Thanks so much.
All right, Zach. Thanks for having me, brother.
We continue to
see
Zach Gelb
Ike
Show,
Reese joining us on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Wesley Financial. Stuck in a timeshare and want out? Contact Wesley Financial Group now and get a free timeshare exit information kit at wesleyfinancialgroup.com. We'll come on back when we do return. We'll update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. But first up, with the latest CBS Sports Radio update, here is the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, Aaron Rodgers tried to defy modern medicine and make it back from a torn Achilles quicker than anyone, but he pumped the brakes on his return today on the Pat McAfee Show.
100% today, I'd be definitely pushing to play. But the fact is I'm not. I've been working hard to get closer to that, but I'm still, 14 weeks tomorrow from my surgery and, being medically cleared as 100% healed.
He is hoping to play 2 more years and also hoping to play for the current coaching staff, expressing support for Robert Saleh and offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, as well as GM Joe Douglas. The adage says when you have once again, the Falcons will start Taylor Heineke this weekend against the Colts. The Dodgers have reportedly signed an extension with Tyler Glasnow through 2027. That will total $111 million. And John Morant set to return to the Grizzlies lineup as they take on the Pelicans tonight. Morant has missed the last 25 games due to suspension, and Memphis is 6-19. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, it's Amy Lawrence. Be sure to listen to CBS Sports Radio at home. Just ask Alexa to play CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, it's Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. The studio smells a little bit weird, and the newsroom smells a little bit weird. So the reason why I say that...
Sorry.
Well, no, I don't think it's anything you did. We would tell you if you smelled bad, Samter. So there's two different smells in the newsroom right now. I guess one of our bosses, David Mayernick, had some tuna salad, and I don't know. He's looking good. He's eating healthy. But I love tuna when I'm eating tuna. But when somebody else is eating tuna fish, I think it just smells absolutely disgusting. Like when I'm eating it, I never think it smells disgusting. But when somebody else brings in like a bowl of tuna or something like that, and they're eating it and walking it around, I think it smells gross. So that was the bad smell that I got. But then someone during the break ordered Katz's Deli, and I got a whiff of pastrami, and I may have, during the break, had a few slices of pastrami from Katz's Deli. And even when Katz's Deli gives you pastrami and it's cold, it's still delicious. So right away, that horrific smell that our boss brought into the office, and David Mayernick bringing in tuna, it got wiped away, and he got saved from whoever was the genius in the newsroom that ordered pastrami. And I've never seen food go away as quickly as what I just saw. I was lucky to get a few scraps in the newsroom. So I do apologize in advance, guys. I got the back end of the pastrami. There was nothing else left for you guys.
Sure. This guy who made such a big deal about me not getting him food during the holiday party didn't get me Katz's Deli pastrami. I'm very upset with you.
I guess it's do what I say, not what I do. The Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio.
You know, the dinner I owe you is off.
I don't know about that. We are going out for dinner on Thursday. We're doing a little show dinner holiday party, which should be fun. And I do find it funny that Samter's getting dinner out of me before he's giving me the dinner that he owes me. So I do find that quite funny. I'm not holding my breath when it comes to you actually paying up on this dinner bet. I think you're going to weasel your way out of this one, and I'll probably never see that dinner ever. Or maybe like 5 years from now. You'll be like, oh, you know what? I'll give you the dinner.
There's no chance you and I are still friends in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
No, it's not about me and you. It's more about you're not going to be able to stand me for 5 years. And about like 3 years from now, you can be like, we're done with this relationship.
Maybe Brandon Tierney had a point about you.
That was 8.5 years, though. Or 9.
No, I'm just kidding. I've always had a good relationship with Samter. You know, there have been some people that have been like, oh, Samter is rough, a little tough to deal with sometimes. I've always had a pleasant experience with Samter. And the other person that people said that about was Taz. When Taz worked here, I had a great relationship with Taz. So I don't know what that says about people evaluating people that way or what it just says about me. But I don't have many people in this building that I know of that don't like me. So there's that. But pastrami wiped away the bad smell of the tuna. Anyway, without further ado, I'm not talking about Freddie Adu. It's time to update you on some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio. We get to a news brief.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Let's start off with Micah Parsons. He was on his podcast, The Edge with Micah Parsons, and I guess he's crying about people rooting for the Cowboys to fail.
everyone just waits for the Cowboys to lose. I saw multiple analysts, people who are fake analysts who somehow got jobs on TV saying, there goes your boy. Like, oh, there he is. That's the person we've been waiting for. It's almost to the point where it's like almost sick. Former players are waiting for other current players to fail so that way they have something to talk about. It's not even to just get into names. I mean, I feel like at this point you kind of know who you are. And it's like, why do you want a person to lose so bad? It seems that a lot of people are just waiting for people to fail.
So at first I thought he was talking about like regular media people, but it's clear he's addressing LaShawn McCoy when he says that you have former players that are just waiting to see current players fail. Now, I'm not saying that Micah Parsons should enjoy some of the hate that his team receives, but they also get a ton of love from their own fans. But this is what happens when you play for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'll simply say this. You don't like what's being said about you. You could control what you could control, and that's what happens on the football field. Go have your team win the Super Bowl this year. And then everyone would have to give the Cowboys a mea culpa. That's like the one part about Micah Parsons, whose game I love. So one part I don't like, where whenever they lose, it's like, oh, everyone's going after my quarterback. Everyone's going after my team. It's ridiculous. It's silly. I'm not saying you have to win every game, but you guys don't win the big games, and that's the problem. Here is Jerry Jones on one of the 9,000 times he does a interview this week, this time with Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan, and Jerry was asked if he still has faith in Mike McCarthy.
Well, he's coached 3 playoff teams in a row. I think he's done an outstanding job. The fact that he's your offensive coordinator as well as your head coach puts him in higher stead than when he was the walk-around coach. I didn't spend my day in there looking grumpy or looking however you might look, even though we were all disappointed. The best part of our team this year has been the coaching staff.
I do think Mike McCarthy gets disrespected. Now, the last 2 years, he's won 12 games and his team has come up short in the postseason. They'll win 12-something games again this year, and they'll come up short again in the postseason. He's a good coach. I would not say, though, he's done an outstanding job. He's done a fine job. He's done a good job. An outstanding job would be taking the Cowboys to the NFC title game, something they have not done since the 1995 season. Here is Christian McCaffrey on the Manning cast. And we all talk about how the Eagles' offense has been bland and has been very predictable. He predicts the Eagles' play calls as they happen.
Jalen Hurts is running a QB draw to the left. The tight end's going to pull. He's deep. Tight end's deep, so he's sifting backside. There you go.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that.
Eli, he sifted, but it wasn't to the left.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good prediction.
So if McCaffrey was the defensive player going up against the Eagles, I'd be like, oh, wow, it's so predictable. But it even does make it more predictable when he doesn't even go up against the Eagles' offense and he's able to tell you what's going to happen. Now, as an offensive player, it's probably easier to identify what's going on. But I think the bigger point here is something that Dan Orlovsky was saying earlier this morning. It's like the Eagles are really only running like 3 things right now. And when you're only running 3 things, you don't have to be Nostradamus or the most clairvoyant person in the world to kind of figure out what they're going to do. So that's even more insult to injury here for the Eagles. Here's George Kittle when asked about Purdy, Brock Purdy, or Christian McCaffrey for MVP, this courtesy of Yahoo Sports.
It's the most valuable player. And I know that the quarterback position is the most important position in sports. However, the MVP should not just be the quarterback, who's the best quarterback award. There's no one on the football field doing what Christian McCaffrey's doing.
I have to rank them. So I've got 5 votes, but only one person can be my first place MVP vote. Who should I vote for?
I'd vote for Christian.
Wow.
Yeah, I would. The things that he's doing this year are just incredible.
So that's not a slight at his quarterback, to be clear. But I think you could have that conversation in saying the most impressive player on the 49ers is Christian McCaffrey and still give praise to Brock Purdy. But we live in this world where it's either one or the other, and you have to either, elevate your guy and be all in on your guy or then trash the other guy that you're trying to elevate him against. But in this case, it's 2 teammates. And, yeah, I do think McCaffrey scares opposing defenses more than Brock Purdy, and that's not taking a shot at Brock Purdy.
But you know who throws him the ball is Brock Purdy. So what happens if the next time, maybe Kittle's
not gonna
flashing
happen.
up over, down the seam or something, Purdy sees him, but there's Ayuk coming across. He's like, I'll go Ayuk instead of Kittle.
Then you know what? Oh, you're talking about the Kittle part. I was going to say that McCaffrey will just run for 1,300 yards anyway. It won't matter if he gets the ball thrown to him or not.
I'm saying Kittle. It's like, hey, Kittle, you're picking McCaffrey over me? I'll throw the ball to Ayuk.
Yeah, I know you're saying that in a joking tone, but I don't think anything can disrupt the 49ers right now in terms of having a bad team chemistry. Jim Donovan has battled leukemia, and he received some treatments this year. Now he's back calling games for the Browns. Here is Jim Donovan on the Browns radio network on that final Hail Mary call. This just brought a smile to my face. It was awesome.
3rd down and 10 from the Browns 45. Fields back to pass. Up in the pocket. He rolls left. Time's run out. He's going to look. He's going to look. He's going to launch. It's going down into the end zone. Knock it down. The ball is intercepted. It's intercepted by the Browns as DeAnthony Bell got it. He got it. Ball game over. Browns win. Browns win 20-17. It's all over. Thank God, because Jim, that ball was knocked down onto Darnell Mooney's chest, who was on the ground, and then it popped up into the air miraculously, and DeAnthony Bell gets the interception. Darnell Mooney had a shot at it. Oh my God, the Cardiac Kids are back, Jim. 9-5, and you remain undefeated.
He's 2-0 since coming back after having to battle leukemia treatments, Jim Donovan. And the reason I wanted to play that is a lot of times, right, in sports media, everyone's like, oh, you always only talk about negative things. You only yell about negative things. That moment and just hearing that call, it's great, but it doesn't really do it justice. They put out a video of the Cleveland Browns, and seeing the smile in Jim Donovan's just face and how elated he was just to be there and how much joy the Browns brought him, it just shows you why sports, everyone can connect to it and why it's so great.
The coolest part for me also was just seeing the joy of everybody else's face.
Yeah.
That how much they cared about Jim Donovan, that he was back and he was happy.
It was almost as if what
great.
They were calling took a back seat because of how cool it was, the person that was calling the game and knowing what, unfortunately, he's had to been through. All right, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. James Palmer from the NFL Network will join us live next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rocking and rolling. Hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. It's crazy. Only 3 weeks left of the NFL regular season. Before you know it, we'll be in conference championship weekend and then the Super Bowl in the middle of February. And now joining us from the NFL Network, one of their best reporters, James Palmer, kind enough to jump on board the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. James, my friend, always appreciate the time. How you been?
I'm good, man. I saw you in the flesh recently, huh? How about that?
Yeah, we were seated right next to each other in the press box. Actually, when the Philadelphia Eagles were used to winning games the long weeks ago. Now they've lost 3 in a row, so I guess we took all their good magic away from them. But I'm concerned about the Eagles right now, and I think team chemistry, which was so rock solid last year, has become an issue with this team this season.
It's an interesting skid. I mean, I still think they win out, but I thought they were going to win out before this game started. And I thought that's where things were going to be. But when the change happens, moving Matt Patricia into running this defense, I was doing the game in New England against the Chiefs and Patriots and talking to people on the sideline. The Chiefs were kind of interested. Patriots kind of like, does this seem like they're panicking a little bit? I'm like, maybe, because specifically from Kansas City's side, they're a team that obviously has some issues themselves that they're trying to work out. But we've seen them, Zach, over the years, right, just try to slowly right themselves and fix their mistakes through December. And then all of a sudden the postseason comes around, and it used to be on the defense, right? Like defense would start slow, Spags would get them going, and there was never any panic in that building. There's still actually no panic in that building. And I find that kind of interesting when you look at them compared to who they faced in the Super Bowl a year ago in Philly. And there's kind of the sense around the league a little bit of like, is this a kind of a panicky move? Like, are they nervous? But you look at the issues on defense, and you brought up the thing in terms of, where they stand. They just look like they've gotten older, like really quickly, specifically at the corner spots. And I think that's exposed more, mainly because they're not getting after the quarterback the way they did last year. I mean, James Bradbury and Darius Slay, I know Slay didn't play in this game, but those two didn't have to cover a whole lot last year. They didn't cover very long, because when you get 70 sacks and you have literally like an A squad and a B squad getting after the quarterback, your secondary doesn't have to play very long. And now they're having to play a little bit longer because the guys up front are playing way more snaps. I think that's another part we're seeing, especially guys that are even younger, like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. They're playing a lot more snaps than they're used to. And I think that's affecting them. Linebackers a spot that's an issue. And I think we're overlooking, to wrap this part up, is like they lost two really good coaches. I mean, like Shane Steichen's in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, he's my favorite. He's my pick right now with what he's doing.
Yeah, he's been incredible with what he's doing and what he's working with in Indianapolis. And you can say the wins aren't there, but if you watch these games, like that's a physical team that plays hard for Jonathan Gannon in Arizona with not a whole lot of talent. So I think you are seeing a team that lost both coordinators that had pretty big roles. I know Gannon was complained about a lot in Philadelphia for some reason. But Shane Steichen was brilliant with that offense. And we've seen, a dramatic change there because they're too talented to be doing what they're doing.
James Palmer here with us. So we know the 49ers are the team to beat, not only the NFC, but the entirety of the NFL. You look at the Lions, the Cowboys, the Eagles, they all have good records, but we don't feel great about their chances of having to beat the 49ers come playoff time. Out of those three teams, who do you have the most confidence in to get the job done up against the Niners?
I mean, I look at the way the Lions played this past weekend, and they were a team that was kind of starting to skid. And we talk so much about momentum. I just brought it up about the Chiefs in December and how big that is. Them righting the ship, I think, was huge because they probably played. You look at the teams that needed to get their mojo back. It was kind of Miami, Kansas City, and Detroit, right? Those were the three teams this past weekend that needed to get it back. Detroit played the best team of the three in Denver, a team that was hot, a team that had a good defense. And they just whooped them on both sides of the ball. And so, I always do fear, though, a team that hasn't really been there before. I know Philly has the pelts on the wall to play late, and we know that their coach doesn't, as I brought up panicking earlier, usually doesn't panic. Their quarterback doesn't panic. But so, you would usually pick them. But I look at Detroit, and if they fix their issues, they have so many different pieces. And I was talking to some guys with the Broncos, and they were just like, they have four rookies that have the chance not just to be stars in this league, to be superstars in this league. And two of them on offense and two of them on defense. And as those guys continue to get better in the league, honestly, I mean, Detroit is getting really dangerous. And I look at the team that's headed in the right direction out of the ones you mentioned with Dallas and Detroit and Philly. I kind of like Detroit right now.
Talking to James Palmer right now. So you brought up the Broncos there for a second. I know that you live in the Denver area as well, and you're in that facility quite often. What's the truth between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson and where their relationship is at through year one?
I think there's a lot that they've had to learn about each other. And I think there's a lot that's had to be tested in terms of patience. I think that's something that doesn't exist with most of the fan bases and the media around the NFL. Just patience isn't something that happens in the NFL. And I think we saw that the way their season's gone. Like they needed to learn a lot about each other. I don't know if they love each other. I do know that they've figured out a working relationship with one another. I mean, I do think they've figured that out. I think they figured out how to make this offense work. I think that's a testament to Sean. I think that's a testament to the entire offensive staff. Davis Mills has played a big part in that as well, in terms of finding ways to make this work. I don't know. Personally, I don't know how their relationship stands. What I do know is Russ is unbelievably competitive. I know Sean is the same. I know they will do anything, specifically Russ, after the season he had last year, anything to win games in this season. But you can tell, I think there's plenty of instances, and we've talked about this at NFL Network, and I've had people around the league tell me, I mean, there are things that Sean has drawn up that Russ hasn't seen, and it probably frustrates him. And it probably frustrates him from time to time because he's drawing guys open, and there have been guys open. So we'll see how this thing continues, but I do think it's a testament to both of them because they both have adapted as this year has gone on to make this offense work in a very odd way.
It seems like there are a couple that like just got married, and after like 6 or 7 months of marriage, they're already in couples therapy. And we're like, okay, they still love each other, but there's issues, and we're trying to see if this marriage will actually have some life to it instead of just having a divorce.
No, the good times are really good. The good times are good right now. Yeah.
It was love at first sight. That was about it between those two. Getting back to Kansas City, just since you were around them and you did their game this past weekend, is that support that they have for Kadarius Toney genuine, or is it just more so, guys, we have nothing else. We just got to work with what we have?
I think it is genuine. This is a strength, and this may sound contradictory to what we've seen on the sideline the last 2 games. But Patrick Mahomes, I'm told by a number of people in the building, has had remarkable patience with what's gone on with that receiver group. They knew going into the season that their identity was going to change. They were well aware of that. They were well aware that the way that they were going to play offensive football was going to change. And they were looking for that player to slide in and really take advantage of the attention Travis Kelce gets, like Juju Smith-Schuster did a season ago. And the thought was that was going to be Kadarius Toney. What we're seeing now realistically is that's Rashee Rice. And that's the player that, when I talk to players in that building, believe is the guy that's going to be the one to step into that role. And you've seen it in Patrick Mahomes. And we've seen the way Mahomes has played with who he trusts and who he doesn't really have all that much trust with, and he's working on it. But behind the scenes, the patience hasn't worn out. I would say that. I would say the intensity and the urgency, from what I'm told from Mahomes, has definitely increased the last 2 weeks from what it was in the first portion of the season, whether that's he's finally fed up, he's pushing guys maybe in a different way. What I have been told is the way he has handled this has been phenomenal during the week, in meetings, the encouraging sense that he has with these guys, because he knows this is the group he has. Specifically when the trade deadline came and went, and they didn't pick up the phone. And so once that happened, I think he knew this is my group, and this is, I have to support this group. But I think we're starting to see a little bit of a change in who they put on the field that past game in New England. The tight ends used a little bit more, in addition to Kelce. You saw where the targets have gone the last 4 games. I mean, heading into that game, Rashee Rice was his number 1 targeted receiver each of the last 3 games. And then this past game, he has 9 catches for what? What do you have, 91? So I think we're seeing that he's just going to start looking elsewhere.
And they also need back, and I know sometimes, right, we dumb it down and we only look at quarterbacks and we only look at coaches and things like that, and like a star tight end like a Travis Kelce. But not having Pacheco as of late is a massive loss for that team.
That is part of their new – I mentioned a new identity. Like, running the football is a new portion of their identity.
Like, outside of Kelce and Mahomes, he's the only other player that would intimidate me if I was a defender.
He is the only other player. Like, the Bills, when they were going into Arrowhead, and I was talking to people in Buffalo, it was – we are concerned about Kelce and Pacheco. That is who we have to stop. That was more they found out he wasn't going to play in the game. But that was their focus. And he runs so hard. He is really the biggest part of their offense, I think, with the way Kelce is getting defended of late. He is huge to the way they play. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a decent game. He made an unbelievable catch in the end zone. Yeah. But he isn't Isaiah Pacheco. And he isn't the physical runner that they are. Specifically, if you look at the way they're built, Zach, like their best part of their offensive line, obviously, is the 3 in the middle. They're fantastic in Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Joe Thuney. That's a great trio in the middle, and that's who they run behind. And that's where Pacheco goes, and that's where they pound the football on people. And we've seen them stick with the run more than Andy Reid has in the past. That's because of Isaiah Pacheco.
Is Belichick back in New England? And if not, where is the hoodie?
This is being there on Sunday, and just like with all the buddies I have there, it just seems like this is not going to be easy, however it happens. I just don't, when it gets to this point, I don't know what's going to happen. It seems like nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen, because let's break down the scenarios. Like, if they bring in somebody to run personnel above him, and it's even somebody he knows, does he respect that person? He won't be that happy. Even if it's somebody like Thomas Dimitroff or Dave Ziegler comes back.
That's it. It's a wrap.
Do they still really have the final say, or does Bill really have the final say? So did you really change anything? And so if you end up parting ways, I know Robert Kraft would really want a pick for him if that's the case. And then that limits maybe where you end up going and where he ends up going. But also I look at it like, what is he, 71, 72? Like, that's another thought I think other teams would think about when they're starting anew with Bill Belichick.
I don't think makes sense, James, for him to go to a spot where they're rebuilding, because he could rebuild right now, and it's going to take 3 more years, and who knows what he's going to want to do at 75. I've been saying this since October. I don't know if the team's ownership will do it, but the Chargers make a ton of sense.
Yeah, and that would be the opposite of what the Chargers have done of late, right? It has been young coaches. It has been guys coming in with a lot of energy, and they're getting their shot. And the sense I get around the league is it's going to be the opposite this time around. Like, there's a core there of really good players that are now starting, if you look at it, like, to get older. Like, Joey Bosa's 29. Like, the group's starting to get a little older. And the core there, Bosa and Derwin James and Keenan Allen, they're all getting a little bit older, and they're all have injury issues too. Like, you have the quarterback in place. You have some major decisions to make. And I think the Chargers would want a veteran coach to make those decisions on altering the core that you have and how you're going to move forward with this team. I think there are enough people around the league that are like, this is a really great spot. I mean, this is probably what Sean Payton wanted a year ago in terms of the place to land.
And it's like,
Justin
don't make
Herbert
that mistake twice, because they punted on firing Staley. They passed on Sean Payton, and here we are. They just fired Staley, and now you have another legendary coach potentially available in Belichick.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, culture is such a big thing that they need to establish there, because I think we've looked at the roster and been like, there's talent here. Like, and it hasn't happened. Somebody like Dan Quinn could come in, who's been tremendous in Dallas in terms of building his side of the ball. There's guys on the offensive side of the ball that rave about him and love him. And then, I don't know, maybe you keep Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator, and he's maybe developed something with Justin Herbert, and you bring DQ in to do it. I mean, I just think it has to be, the thought is it's somebody that's been around, whether it's Harbaugh, whether it's Belichick, whether it's DQ. It would make some sense, but this just sounds, when we talk about Bill to bring it back, like I don't see this happening very smoothly, and no matter which way it is. In all the business deals Robert Kraft has done in football and in his businesses, this might be the most sensitive and the most difficult to navigate.
You mentioned Harbaugh. If you had to take a guess right now, back at Michigan or in the NFL next year, James Palmer?
Well, as a Buckeye, I want him out of Michigan. He lost 3 straight. So that part's bothering me a little bit. But I do think,
don't worry, you have a great quarterback next year, right?
Yeah. We don't have a quarterback right now, actually. I don't even know who's going to play in the bowl game. But it just, with the way he sniffed around the league last year, I just sensed that he'd be, eyeing to go back. And there might be some decent spots available. And so I do think he kicks the tires on the league again.
Now, how about going with this Ohio State trend? Justin Fields next year with the Bears. Is he back or is he not? Because I see both sides of this. Like, you keep him, you draft Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore, and then I see the other side. I still don't know how great he could be, and there's not many years left on that contract.
Yeah, I think that's it. I had this discussion with Steve Weish on our show. I think he could play himself out of Chicago by playing brilliantly down the stretch or playing poorly.
Wow.
Like, both ways. Like, because if he plays really, really well, this is where they can get even more capital if they decide to go quarterback at 1 with that Panthers pick. And this is if they fall in love with, like, Caleb Williams, right? And they just fall in love and they go, this is what we want. It is not Justin Fields. There are going to be teams that are going to be interested in Justin Fields. I heard Atlanta wasn't interested in the past, but if I was Atlanta right now, I would be interested in him.
1,000%.
I think that's a really good fit for them, specifically if Arthur stays there and just keeps his job. I think he fits actually what they would do. And so I think you could develop more capital to build around your new rookie quarterback if he plays well. His value's even higher. And if he plays poorly, well, then that even makes your decision even easier. But I do think when you ask around the league, like, this kid has not been given a real decent shake of it in terms of how it's gone for him already. I've had conversations with Matt Nagy about it, and he has unbelievable talent. And we've seen flashes. And I think we've seen the Bears play actually really good football. Specifically, that defense has turned a corner. And what would he be like with some more talent around him? And he didn't lose that game on Sunday. I mean, they had that game. Well, there were some nasty drops. And so, yeah, it's a really tough decision Ryan Poles is in. And I think what's the deciding factor is if they fall absolutely in love with somebody in the draft. Then that makes it easy for you. You know what I mean? If you just know this guy is who we want over Justin.
I know he won't be the number 1 overall pick because it probably will be Caleb Williams. Depending on where he goes, that's a different conversation like we're having. It does feel like, though, the best player in this draft right now, months away, is Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, it's not even a question. It's not debatable. I've had more than one receiver coach in the league tell me if he played in the NFL this season, he would have been a top 5 receiver in the NFL. That is where he is viewed by the guys who coach the position in the league. Like he makes it look so easy. And I've talked to all of these receivers. I've had a conversation with Jackson Smith-Njigba, tremendous catch last night, by the way. And I've had a conversation with Garrett Wilson about this. Like, all of them rave about each other. Chris Olave was in that room. Jameson Williams was in that room. They all say Marvin's the best receiver out of all of them. And when do you usually see receivers taken in the first round, specifically receivers, where the way they think about themselves openly admit that the other guy in the room is just hands down better than the rest of them?
Doesn't happen. You know?
No. Not
especially
that
at that position. How many times do you hear guys say that they're the best receiver in the league, and it's like, nah, you're good, but you're not better than X, Y, and Z.
But those guys know, like, if they said any different, and they're phenomenal players. Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, they're all first-round picks. Garrett Wilson's an unbelievable player. They all know they're like, I'm lying through my teeth. Marvin is the best player out of it, and he has everything. That's the other part of it. I know we look at this, and we probably don't look at this as much with other positions publicly as opposed to the quarterback spot in the draft process. We look at everything from, character and work ethic and where they come from, how they're made up, all of that stuff with quarterbacks. It's dissected ad nauseum. And for some reason, we don't talk about it enough with some other players. Like, his work ethic is through the roof. I was there for their pro day. He works on a jug machine that he doesn't even need a quarterback. It has routes dialed into it.
Wow.
He runs the route. It goes to him. Like, his work ethic is unbelievable. It's probably the only thing that beats his talent, which is like an unreal combination. Yeah.
Coach's dream.
Steve Smith and I were there together for the pro day, and Steve was talking to Marvin Sr. because Steve, that was who he idolized. He idolized Marvin. And Marvin said to him straight up, he's like, he is hands down better than me.
Wow,
and it's
Marvin said that.
Marvin said that.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, maybe a dad's going to say that about their son, right? Like, I knew, but sure. But
I don't know
Marvin
if you admit that, though, if you're dad this early. I don't know.
I don't know if you do, but he was like, he's better than me. And I know it.
Last thing.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll ask you, James Palmer, who's always great, who joins us from the NFL Network. It's the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. My Super Bowl prediction right now, I changed it on Monday. It's the Buffalo Bills going up against the San Francisco 49ers. What is your Super Bowl prediction?
I love that. I mean, I love that. Can we just chat instead of my prediction? We just chat the Bills right now. Like I know it's the cliche right now to say nobody wants to play the Bills.
And last week, by the way, because I've been telling this to everybody, I got them after that win against Kansas City plus 1,000 to win the AFC. That's when I made the bet.
Dude, I thought that when I was at that game in Philly and they came up short in overtime. I was like, back then they lost that game, and I was like, I don't think anybody wants to play this team if they get in. Like, they run the ball so well. They have a guy that can just win games himself. And now they've just won 2 games with Josh really not having to do much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing. Like, they beat the Cowboys, and Josh Allen, I mean, didn't have to be Superman. He didn't even have to be Clark Kent. I don't even know to get out of bed. Like, he didn't have to do anything. And so I think that's a really cool pick, because if you look at the way this shakes out at the end, if they win out, and they can totally win out, or let's just say they win their next 2 games, which are definitely winnable, and Miami loses one of their next 2 games, which are both difficult, they'll be going down to Miami in Week 18 for the division.
Sunday night, probably.
And that puts them in a great spot to where they could be playing in Buffalo, which is where nobody wants to go in the postseason. So it's actually not a completely insane pick, because I mentioned those teams at the beginning of this that need to get their mojo back. I think we do have some things with Kansas City we're still curious about. Turnovers are still an issue in Kansas City offensively, whether they're Mahomes' fault or not. The turnovers are still happening. The penalties on offense are still happening. And then in Miami, I do like that they won a game without Tyreek. But you saw 2 weeks ago them play without Tyreek, and how different did the offense look? And how, and so I do have questions at the top of the AFC, but the one team like that I don't really, for some reason, have any questions about is Baltimore. Like, guys get hurt in Baltimore, and we don't even seem to be concerned. Like, you know what I mean? Like, other teams
healthy. They only need
as long as he's healthy. Exactly. Like, that's the way they're built, and the way we've seen them play through injury with other players on this team. Like, Ronnie Stanley goes down, everybody's like, like they'll lose like Marcus Williams, like, they'll still win, right? Like they'll still win. Like, and that, I think that's the sign of a really good team, right? I think it's a sign of a good team that's deep and well coached. When you can lose major players, like you lose your running back to an ACL who's playing really well. I know he's a young player. You lose Mark Andrews, and your offense isn't missing a beat. Like, for us to just be so cavalier about like, yeah, the Ravens are good, and if they lose so and so, I think they'll be fine, is a testament of really, I think, how good they are.
He's James Palmer from the NFL Network. Always love our conversation. James, great to see you a few weeks ago. Appreciate the time today.
Yeah, man. What's in person next time? What do we got? We got anything coming up? You gonna make any trips?
I don't know what I'm doing yet. I've not looked at. I'm going to the national championship game. The Buckeyes will not be there, but I'll be there.
Oh, God. We're back on game day morning with Eisen. Appreciate it.
Catch you later. There he is, James Palmer from the NFL Network. All righty, great stuff with James. Always love his conversations with us. We'll take a break. When we come on back, Taylor Heineke is now back to being the guy, I guess, for the Atlanta Falcons. Should Arthur Smith be back with the team in 2024? We will talk about that when we return.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. .30 seconds remaining. .15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
The drama Dallas choking Cowboys. Welcome back. I missed you. I would not be lambasting the Dallas Cowboys today. I would not be chastising the Cowboys if they would have just had a pulse in the game. But that body was dead early in that contest. And then you had to sit at your funeral, and it was a slow, long eulogy and a slow, long funeral the entire day.
Here's Zach Gelb.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. You know, I'm really annoyed at the Atlanta Falcons. Before the year, I thought I made a savvy prediction. Oh, I'm going to take the Falcons to win the NFC South. When everyone was talking about the Saints and, the Saints are going to win this division. And I like the pick of the Atlanta Falcons, and I like them to win that division ever since June or July. And they have just blown this opportunity. And it's one thing to not have a quarterback, but Arthur Smith week in and week out shows you that someone that we once thought was moving in the right direction as a coach, right? He was getting the most out of his team. When you put a little expectation and a little pressure on Arthur Smith, the guy just folds. And he does things that I think are just marinated in someone that is egotistical. Because it's almost as if he's trying to win games and he wants his fingerprints on why they're winning games. And all year, and you saw this early in the season, I had a big issue with it because I knew it made no sense. They are trying to prove a point with Desmond Ridder that he is their guy. And they've already benched him once, and now they're benching him again, and they're going back to Taylor Ham-Heineke. So it's past the point of even trying to make the argument that Desmond Ridder is your guy. But for Arthur Smith, you didn't play to your strengths this year. Like, I don't understand why you would take Bijan Robinson in the top 10 if your goal from what it looks like this year is to have Desmond Ridder for most of the season as the focal point of your offense. You needed, I know people don't like the term game manager, but all you needed this year was Desmond Ridder to be a game manager. And in the red zone, they haven't used Bijan Robinson nearly enough. And they haven't used Bijan Robinson even nearly enough before you get into the final 20 yards. It just makes no sense. And I don't think Arthur Blank is going to fire Arthur Smith, but I think he should. Like, you saw how long it took Blank to move on from Dan Quinn. And that was someone that at least got Matt Ryan to an MVP level, even though DQ is a defensive-minded coach, and he got them to a Super Bowl. But look how long it took since that Super Bowl and that loss for them to get rid of Dan Quinn. And now it's like Arthur Smith shouldn't have a leg to stand on, but I have zero confidence and I have zero expectation that they're going to move on from him. But I would bring in somebody else because they have talent on this team. Their defense has vastly improved from where it was a year ago. They made a coaching change. And on offense, you have a great young wide receiver in Drake London. Kyle Pitts is not playing at this unbelievable level that we thought he was, but you could argue if he's being used the right way, and also you don't have a quarterback. And then you got two good running backs, one who's supposed to be great in Bijan Robinson, and another solid running back in Tyler Algier. So I would go get a head coach this offseason, and you need a new quarterback. And I know James Palmer talked about it. I've been saying this for a while. The Bears want to move on from Justin Fields. Atlanta should be the first person on the phone. You know, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, I saw he's not going to play in the bowl game, the Heisman Trophy winner. I don't know where Atlanta's going to be in the draft. We'll see where their final record is, but they're not going to be in Caleb Williams' range. They're not going to be in Drake May range. I don't know still where Jaden Daniels is going to go. I think he's played himself into the first round, but I don't think it's a lock that he's a top 10 pick. So if you're just outside of the top 10, and I know it's a big pileup right now with a bunch of teams that have 6 and 7 wins, so you're going to have some teams that are going to be in that range through the next 3 weeks that fall that will be a top 10 pick or just outside the top 10. Jaden Daniels available? I go get him. Imagine that speed on offense. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Jaden Daniels. And Arthur Smith, you would think, should be able, as an offensive mind, to get the most out of this talent, but the approach was all backward this year. And I think, and sometimes just coaches, head coaches, are better off being coordinators. And the moment he got the spotlight, he almost wanted to do something that just made no sense. So I don't think Arthur Smith should be back, but I have very little confidence in Arthur Blank moving on from Arthur Smith this year. And he'll go into next year as a coach whose seat is going to be on fire. And that could be an early, like I'll make a prediction right now, that could be an early in-season firing if they get off to a shaky start next year. Like you go around it right now, the AFC East, I do think that Salah's back. You know, McDermott's going to be back now. We know McDaniel's not going anywhere. Belichick, I think, is on his way out. In the AFC North, I don't think anyone is getting moved on from. Maybe some teams will come calling for Mike Tomlin, but I don't think the Steelers are trading Mike Tomlin. Everyone's safe as long as they want to be safe inside the AFC South. In the AFC West, you already have Staley fired, and you already have Josh McDaniels fired. So those two jobs are already open with the Chargers and the Raiders. NFC East, Rivera, he's going to be canned at the end of the year. Daboll will be back with the Giants. Cowboys, Eagles, you could forget about it. Maybe if the Cowboys lose wild card weekend, they get rid of McCarthy, but I don't think that's going to happen. NFC North, Eberflus has turned into an interesting conversation. I still lean that he's going to get fired at the end of the year. I just don't think he's head coaching material. I think he's more better off as a defensive coordinator. So that's 5 jobs right there. We already know Carolina is open. I do think that you'll see Arthur Smith back with the Falcons, even though he shouldn't be. The Saints or the Bucks, and I think that goes 50-50. One of those teams are going to win the division. Whoever doesn't, could you see Dennis Allen getting fired? Could you see Todd Bowles getting fired? It's not out of the realm of possibilities. And then everyone else is safe in the NFC West. It's like as you go through this, like last week we thought there'd be like 10 jobs open, or 2 weeks ago you thought there'd be 10 jobs open. That was about like 6 or 7 names, and then there's another surprise name or two each and every year that has a possibility of getting fired. So I look at this right now. Atlanta's an attractive job. I would go get one of those marquee guys on the market, because what Arthur Smith has done this year, it's really changed my opinion on him. I went from thinking, okay, that guy has some potential, that guy could be a good head coach, to his approach on offense this year makes no sense. And I have no problem with them going back to Taylor Ham-Heineke. Let me be clear about that. You can't continue to start Desmond Ridder after that mistake that he made last week. And I'm not putting it all on Arthur Smith, but the part that I am is that even earlier in the year, before you even knew you had a quarterback problem, you tried to ask Desmond Ridder to be someone right now that he's just not capable of being. Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We will take our final break of the day. When we come on back, did Dylan Raiola make the right decision to commit to go Big Red with Nebraska? And also, Carson Beck is returning to Georgia. Are they still the best team in college football and the team to beat for next season, even after their loss in the SEC championship game to Nick Saban and Alabama? Update time first. Here he is, the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio.
Sports Flag.
No, it doesn't appear as if Aaron Rodgers will be delivering a Christmas miracle. The Jets quarterback said on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN he'd push to come back if he was at 100%, but he won't be there for several more weeks. He also said he does want to play beyond next year.
With some of the things that I've learned over the last year, taking care of my body and surrounding myself with some great people who've been helping me with my nutrition and my functional training at a more acute level, I feel like I can play more years and I can be effective into my 40s.
Rodgers also said he wants to play for the current coaching staff and had support for all of them. as well as Joe Douglas. After losing to the Panthers, managing only 7 points, the Falcons are going in a different direction, benching Desmond Ridder once again and turning to Taylor Heineke, looking for a spark. Tyler Glasnow and the Dodgers reportedly agreeing to an extension through 2027 that'll be worth $111 million. The Pelicans go for their 5th straight against the Grizzlies, who expect to have Ja Morant making his season debut after serving his 25-game suspension. I'm Rich Echo.
Jim Rome here. Coming up Wednesday in the Jungle, a conversation with Bengals corner Mike Hilton. See you Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern and 9 Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Before we talk about Dylan Raiola and also Carson Beck, I just want to ask 2 NFL questions real quickly to you, Moist Mike. So right now, the Eagles and the Cowboys are both sitting at 10-4. Without doing a deep dive into the schedule, just based off your gut instinct, going into the final 3 weeks of the season, who ends up winning the NFC East? Will it be the Eagles or will it be the Cowboys?
I think it'll be the Eagles.
Okay.
I want to believe in the Cowboys, but they just kind of fall flat, and I think the Eagles will get it right.
Even though I don't think the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl, and even though I think there are big problems with the Eagles, I still do agree that the Eagles will win the NFC East. And when you look at the schedules, the Eagles, in their final 3 weeks of the season, they play the Giants twice, and then sandwiched in between are the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the game that concerns me the most, looking at it with an Eagles kind of lens on this one, is actually the Cardinals game, because that fan base went after Gannon for an entire season when they went to a Super Bowl. And I know Gannon did not do right in terms of the interview process with the Cardinals and all that stuff leading into the Super Bowl and all the stuff that's been reported. But I could see that being like win one for the ball coach, win one for Jonathan Gannon, Kyler Murray, nice little relationship towards the end of the season. But I still do believe, like, if you put a gun to my head, yeah, I'm taking the Eagles to beat the Giants, the Cardinals, and then also the Giants again. Now, the Cowboys, I do believe they split one of these next 2 games. They play at Miami on Sunday, and then they're home on Saturday evening, December 30th against the Lions. I don't think they win both. And then they do play the Washington Commanders on that final Sunday of the season. So I think the Eagles are going to find a way to win the division, and it'll probably be like the Cowboys having 2 more wins and a loss, and then the Eagles will win out. Now, in the AFC East, it felt like this was over for a while. Now the Bills have new life. The Dolphins are 10-4, and then you have the Buffalo Bills, who are 8-6. Going into the final 3 weeks of the season, without looking at the schedules, Mike, who would you assume would win the division?
I still think it's the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins have a 2-game lead, and I know everyone's high on the Bills, but there's just something about the Bills I don't trust yet. The Dolphins just need to win 1 game, basically, especially if they win the last game of the year, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because they're playing against the Bills. I know that. I don't know who else they're playing, but I'm going with the Dolphins. A 2-game lead with 3 games left to go. I'm not that high on the Bills.
So I've been saying since the summer the Dolphins are going to win this division. As I sit here on December 19th in the year of 2023, this is the first time I'm going to move off the Dolphins winning the AFC East. I'm actually think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills. So the Dolphins have not been able to win a big game all season. I know they're 10-4, but when they go up against the better teams, they lose. They lost to Philly. They lost to Kansas City. By the way, they lost to Buffalo 48-20 back in week 4. So the Dolphins the next 2 weeks play the Cowboys, tough spot, and then they're in Baltimore. Does anyone think they're winning both those games?
I don't think they have to win both. If they win 1,
well, yeah, and then they have to win the final game of the season up against the Buffalo Bills to win the division.
Yeah, if they win one, the Bills have to win all three, and then they'll get the tiebreak over the Dolphins, yeah.
Yeah, because the Bills, their schedule, Los Angeles, easy win.
Chargers or Rams?
Chargers.
Oh, yeah, that's easy.
The Patriots, easy win. And I know they lost them early in the year. The Patriots aren't going to beat them twice. That's just not going to happen. And then you play the Dolphins. So I think the Bills are going to win out. They're going to be at 11 wins. And I do think Dallas, Baltimore, that will be a split for the Dolphins. And in the final week of the season, I have the Bills winning.
We'll also see
it's
what
not
happens.
Crazy.
So they play the Ravens in 2 weeks?
Yes, 2
so
weeks.
Cowboys and Ravens.
Those are great late season games, by the way.
By that point, the Ravens might have the 1 seed locked in, so they might be, holding off a little bit. We'll see.
But you're
Although
not.
Actually, they'll be playing the Dolphins, and that'll probably be for the 1 seed.
Yeah, but not only that, it's week 17, not week 18. You're not going to rest your guys for 2 weeks, even if you do have the 1 seed locked up.
And then have another
And then
bye
have
week.
another week. And then it's, you come out of the divisional round, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to be saying, well, you should have never rested your guys in week 7.
God, the Dolphins-Cowboys just feels like the all-choke bowl. I mean,
really
seriously.
does.
It's like, which quarterback is going to look worse? Which quarterback is going to just bounce the passes way too often? Which defense is just going to, give up everything? Which team is just going to fall flat and look awful?
The big difference, though, is Mike McCarthy and Mike McDaniel. Because you have just 2 different-looking coaches, but I guess they do kind of sound similar. Because whenever McCarthy speaks, I have no clue what he's trying to say. He always sounds like he's out of breath. And then whenever McDaniel speaks, I literally have no clue what that dude is trying to say. I always feel as if I'm on the outside part of the inside joke with Mike McDaniel. So, but those 2 coaches, Mike McDaniel looks like he could be coaching GQ, and Mike McCarthy looks like, and I could say this as a Husky fella, that he looks like he could be coaching for the Big and Tall store or something like that. So that should be a fun matchup, no doubt about it, between the Miami Dolphins and the Dallas Cowboys this weekend. All righty, let's get back to college football. Did Dylan Raiola make the right decision? So I love the decision by Dylan Raiola. You are the number 1 recruited quarterback. You go and already commit to Georgia. Then you flip that commitment and you go where your father dominated as a legendary offensive lineman. And then also your uncle is currently the offensive line coach. But the question I just have about this, is it the right decision? Because if he never had family that went to Nebraska, unless Nebraska, with NIL really came to the table, he's probably not considering Nebraska, who was once a legendary program, and now they're trying to build it back up with Coach Matt Rule, who built up Temple and built back Baylor. You have Georgia right now, who's the number 1, even though they're not in the college football playoff. The last 2-3 years, they've been the number 1 team for most of the year in the sport, winning 2 championship games, and then also being the number 1 team in the country up until pretty much the most feared team in the country until they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. So let me just ask you this, Samter. If you were Raiola, would you go where the better program is and the preeminent or one of the preeminent programs right now, or would you say, no, I'm a sucker for the family ties of it, and I'm going to go try to build something back up and even further add to the Raiola legacy in Nebraska?
I mean, Nebraska, when they are humming,
it's been a long time,
is one of the best programs in the history of the sport. So to join the Bulldogs and go back to Georgia, even if he's good, there'll be questions of, is he good because he has the best team around him? Mm-hmm. And if he goes and he rebuilds Nebraska back to that glory, whether they win a national title or at least contend for a Big Ten championship, with USC,
3-4 straight bowl games,
and Oregon joining. At the end of the day, if he
and it will
could
be
do that,
easier now to make the playoff too because there's 12 teams. You have a 2-loss season, you'll get into the college football playoff.
Sure, but at the end of the day, if you could bring a formerly prominent program back to that level, I think that means more for what he could do, and I think it would probably be easier for him to do that. He's going to succeed at Georgia. Yeah. He would be fine at Georgia. He'll have the talent. He's a good enough player. He actually, because I lived in Arizona for a while, he left Arizona in high school to play for a high school closer to Georgia so that he can get used to the area and understand the area. And then he still went to Nebraska, which I thought was really interesting that he made the high school move and then came back. I don't think he'll regret it. I'm looking at Nebraska. They have a top 20 recruiting class this year. Obviously, having him helps. But they got like 4 or 5 4-star recruits to go along with it.
They had a great defense last year. They had no offense.
Right, and then once a guy like him joins, there's going to be other guys. And Matt Rule, one thing we know about him is he can recruit. So I think that's a good move.
The thing, I respect it. I don't know if it's the right move, but I like the move. The thing with Georgia, though, you're not wrong. Like, Stetson Bennett was a really good quarterback, never got the credit. Carson Beck this year had a really good season, really never got the credit. You know, when does Georgia go into the Alabama realm of, remember when Alabama had all these fine quarterbacks and they were winning, and then they got Jalen Hurts, and even Jalen Hurts was questioned. They got Tua Tagovailoa, then they got Mac Jones, then they got Bryce Young, and you started to see them jump right up in all these first-round draft picks at the quarterback position. For Raiola, it would have felt different if he went to Georgia, because even though people doubt Bennett with his story and they doubt Carson Beck as well, this is the number one quarterback. So I do think it would have been the changing of really like a domino effect, where once one of the number one guys goes there and has success, then a lot more would start to follow. But no, I don't have a problem with it. And I do think that you're right. There's more to gain. But if Nebraska doesn't get their act together, then everyone's going to be sitting there saying, "Oh man, he should have went to Georgia and should have just stayed with his decision." But I respect the leap to not just travel the easier path, which would have been going to Georgia. And Carson Beck announced the other day that he's returning to Georgia. And let's not be surprised next year, after Georgia loses one game this year, that if Georgia's not right back into the top spot of college football next year and competing for that national championship, even though the CFP does expand to 12. But I love that Georgia did go down, because it brings the Alabama monster back into the landscape of college football. Over the last 2 years, people were starting to take their shots at Alabama, and now they're once again a force to be reckoned with. All righty, that is a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Would like to thank my two guests today, Ike Reese for joining us, the former Eagles linebacker and current host on Sports Radio 94 WIP, and James Palmer from the NFL Network, who joined us earlier in this hour. Big thanks to Stuart Kovacs and Moist Mike for producing this extravaganza. We'll be back tomorrow on a Wednesday. Man, this week is really flying by at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Also like to thank each and every one of you for listening and interacting with the show. You can always give me a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace.